Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman back with the 260th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We are in the deep of it, boy. We started 6 years ago. If you'd described the situation of the United States to us 6 years ago, we wouldn't have believed it. But here we are. We have a ton of stuff to deal with, as you might guess. We're going to start with Hedy Tripp and our Minnesota correspondent are going to give us an update on the situation with Target or Target, which is based in Minneapolis. And we're going to talk about No King's Day, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. We want to make sure everybody's hip to all that. We're going to have a report from Waldport, Oregon. The wonderful Mayor Heidi there is going to give us an update. And then we're going to do a very deep dive and take a lot of time to talk about election protection. We have, well, we think we have an election coming up in the fall. We know that there are those who prefer we not have that election, and we're going to discuss that dynamic. We're going to talk with Ray McClendon, Ray Lutz, and other folks who are deep in that issue. That's where we started. We're also going to get a report from Susan Young in Texas. One of the things we discussed early on in this excursion, God, I call it an excursion. Trump has been calling the war in Iran an excursion. I have to come up with a better name. Is gerrymandering and how gerrymandering can actually backfire. We dealt with this very explicitly over the years, and it seems to be happening. Susan Young in Houston is going to give us the chair of the Pacifica National Board is going to give us an update on that. In the second hour, we're going to start talking about energy, which of course is at the core of this war in Iran, and then we're going to return to the Epstein files. Mike Hersh, tell us that joke your friend told me. I'll tell you before we're going on.
Well, it was actually my brother. He said that Trump went to war in Iran to distract from the Epstein files. Now he's going to have to release more Epstein files to distract from the war.
Well, there you go. And the this ratings that Variety would give this war in Iran a real thumbs down. So, Hedy Tripp, let's get right into business here. We got 53 folks with us. And we're going to start with Target, then we're going to go to Waldport, Oregon, and then we're going to get into election theft. Deep dive. There's also a website I want to show people that's kind of up for grabs. We want to talk about that. Tatanka may be something you'll be interested in. But Hedy Tripp, our St. Cloud, Minnesota correspondent, tell us what's going on with Target. Very interesting stuff.
Okay, Hedy Tripp reporting from St. Cloud, Minnesota, which is 70 miles from Minneapolis. Target has supported ICE in Minnesota. It allowed ICE to stage operations in its parking lots during Metro Surge. They entered Target stores on January 31st, grabbed and detained two workers who were screaming that they were U.S. citizens. Now, one act of resistance from local folks, they went into the Target store, each bought a single container of salt to melt ice, then immediately returned it over and over again to clog up checkout lines and drive away customers. So again, local resistance happened that way. The boycott is not over. I have not shopped at any Target stores for over 400 days. Now, as you know, Target headquarters are in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm briefly summarizing from a leading Black newspaper, Minnesota Spokesman Recorder, on March 12th by Izzy Canizares. A press conference was held outside Target headquarters with the message that the national boycott is not over. It'll only be over when founders of the Target boycott ascertain that the demands are fully met. Now, the boycott began on February 1st, 2025, first day of Black History Month last year. Target had ended its DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, following the Trump's inauguration. It also donated $1 million to the Trump Vance inauguration. So, who are the founders of the national boycott. Pastor, doctor, and lawyer Nakima Levy Armstrong, Monique Colors Dodi, and Jailani Hussein. Mr. Hussein is a leader of CAIR, CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations in Minnesota. He is a leader here, particularly within the Somali community. Monique Colars Dodi is the leader in Black Lives Minnesota. And Nakima Levy Armstrong is a very well-known African-American civil rights activist. And she was the one that entered into the city's church, and because the pastor there was an ICE leader, and she wanted to give herself up to the authorities voluntarily, but it was declined because they wanted her in handcuffs. They did that, and then they used that picture. They AI'd it to show that she was sobbing, so it's not true. You have here an amazing woman who is being portrayed as causing riots with a very sad face. Not true. If you know Black churches, call and response, it's full of noise. But anyway, she was arrested along with Don Lemon and other folks. You can check out Amy Goodman's interview with her. But going back to Target, out-of-state activists, including Pastor Dr. Jamal Bryant, held a press conference in Washington just on March 11th, saying that the boycott was over because at least 75% of the demands had been met. They had not consulted any of the Minnesota leaders. He has since apologized because the press conference and especially Dr. Armstrong said that the Target has not reinstated its DI program. The original demands have not been met. And so she is asking people to continue to stand with grassroots leadership in the state of Minnesota to continue the boycott of Target.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Hedy, thank you. Anything further to report from Minnesota?
No, everything is the same. We still have parents that pick up their children as well as children of folks that are afraid to come and pick them up. It's all, as I reported last week with Jonathan, it's just a shape-shifting into bounty hunters and slave hunters, and however you want to describe that.
Okay, Hedy, thank you very much. Thank you for that report. I will not be shopping at Target, which I haven't done in maybe 10 years, but nonetheless, I will not give Target my business. Anybody else want to jump in? Mike Hersh, you got a hand here, and then we're going to go to Mayor Heidi in Oregon.
Yeah, while we have you, Hedy, rather, we're going to go on to Heidi. Hedy, we're trying to get Representative Ilhan Omar on, and we're also going to try to get Eric, the is it a state senator, back on? Right.
All right.
So big things coming from Minnesota, and we really appreciate all your help on that.
Thank you, Hedy. Thank you for that. And we do want Congresswoman Omar to come back on. I want to ask her if Congresswoman Omar, if she had caught the guy that squirted her, I'm sure everybody saw that, would he still be alive? So anyway,
It was apple cider, by the way. Did you know
what's
that?
that?
It was
Oh,
apple cider that he squirted on.
thank goodness it wasn't worse. Thank you, Hedy Tripp, for your report from Minnesota. Mayor Heidi of Waldport, Oregon. You've been with us in your campaign to preserve democracy. You have a new report for us, please.
I do. It's really exciting today. Actually, this happened the evening of last week on the 9th. I saw on Facebook the people who had petitioned to recall me had put on Facebook that since I decided not to run again, they were just going to quit their efforts to recall me. However, you know, I never said I wouldn't for sure ever run again. I just said that I was really bummed out about it. So, um, long story short, they did not collect the signatures. They needed 192 signatures to recall me, and they did not turn those signatures in. There's a lot of people in town who believe the people who did sign the petitions were staff and paid city employees, and that they were afraid that if they turned their signatures in, then that would become public comment or public information. And so they decided just not to turn the petitions in at all. But what's the irony of this whole situation, Sunny, is that 2 weeks ago, the original group in our community who recalled the 6 city councilors who unlawfully removed me from council or tried to unlawfully remove me from council, they resubmitted their petition. So within a week's time, my recall disappeared, and the recall against the other 6 city councilors has gone for another chance.
Unbelievable.
And if you, yeah, and if you recall, they got 300 signatures for each city councilor to recall them, but the
Wow.
city manager would not let the city clerk certify that election. And so the people who were doing that recall could have gotten legal advice and gone into court system, and it really would have just locked this recall up into the court systems. And so although they knew that they were in the right and the city was in the wrong, they just decided to let it go and just start over again. And so that's where we're at in Waldport, Oregon.
So for those of you who are joining us new, Heidi is the great mayor of the town of Walport, Oregon, which is on the coast, the west coast of Oregon. And there's a right-wing city council, and they had her arrested. They tried to throw her out. They just gave up on their recall, but those 6 MAGA city councilors are facing a recall. So
Yep.
everybody on this call, we all need to move to Walport, register to vote, and throw out those 6 councilors. Heidi, it's great to have democracy in action with you as our witness, and so keep up. It's fantastic. Thank
So
you very much.
Heidi, why did they arrest you?
Well, to make it a short story, when they didn't like me, they didn't want me elected,
Well,
and
that's the
the
reason. In the age of Trump, if they don't like you, they can arrest you, right?
well,
That's
and this was
you
a
know.
year ago. This was a year ago. This was before everybody started getting arrested, believe it or not. I like was kind of one of the first. But they did it in March, and the thing was is there was 13 letters about the city manager complaining about the city manager. And when I went to pick those letters up, the staff said I was, hostile and aggressive, and I yelled at them, and they even said that they cowered in a corner from me. And mind you, they're behind bulletproof glass, and I'm a very calm person, and so I was really taken back by these charges. But there
So
was a charge.
what was the charge? What were the
There
charges?
wasn't. So there were no charges. Then they removed me simply because they said I had a pattern of being hostile, and they needed to save the city from me. When that happened, I got an attorney on April 3rd who told me they can't just tell you to leave because they don't like you. And that attorney told me I had to go and assert myself, which is the irony again. Here I am being called hostile, but then being told to assert myself. And he said, you have to go and sit in your seat. You have to go and take your seat and not evict your seat. So when they heard that I was coming to the city council meeting to take my seat after they already removed me, they called the sheriff's department and wanted me arrested. And so, being the good protester I am, I put my attorney's phone number on my hand, and I called, my partner and asked them to come and bail me out when I get arrested. But luckily, when I was arrested, they didn't take me to jail. They just cited me for disorderly conduct.
Oh
And
God.
then the DA never pursued that ticket. So it got dropped.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Good for you. That's really fantastic. We
But
appreciate
then
that.
the only thing they had to do then was to try to recall me. And so that was the actual legal effort was what they were trying to do was recall me.
And then they lost your phone number, so they couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Mike Hersh, did you
Yeah.
want to
And
jump in here? Mike?
Yeah, yeah. Somebody in the chat was wondering why we're focusing on this, and I just want to say really, really quickly that this shows that democracy is under assault in small towns, big cities, everywhere, and it's up to us to show follow the example that Mayor Heidi is showing with her courage, and also ICE is convoluting around in your area as well. And do you have any updates on
Yeah,
what's going
ICE
on
was
with
trying
that?
to. Well, thank you for that, Mike. ICE was trying to buy a hotel or something in your town.
yeah, that was in December, and it was my little town Waldport and my neighboring town Newport, where Homeland Security told Newport they were going to take our Coast Guard helicopter and take it down to the Mexican border where ICE needed it more. Right at the height of our fishing season, where we have crab boats that go down quite frequently here, so that's why we have the helicopter. But we also have a very old airport, and they decided that they could use that airport instead of to house this helicopter, but to make it a detention facility for the state of Oregon. And the people stood up and they said no, 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 and they came out in droves. At my own city council meeting, we had over 400 people write
Oh my
emails
God.
for public comment, and we had over 100 people show up for public comment. All of them saying, "We do not want this. We absolutely do not want this on our
And
in
how
our
many
county."
people live? How many people live in Walport?
Well, in the winter, about 2,000, a little less than 2,000. Yeah, we're
So,
just a tiny little town, but we have
but so
hotels.
you had a fifth. You had 20% of the town show up at the town meeting.
Well, to be fair, it was the whole West, there was the West Coast showed up, like
Oh
the
wow.
whole Oregon coast.
Right.
It's pretty strong consensus on the Oregon coast that we do not want ICE to be using our ports. We don't want them to use our airports. We don't want them in our hotels. And so we just said no. We just said no to ICE, and we continue to do so. So yeah, it is. It's a rough haul right now, and I just want to say to everyone that I really wanted. I ran for council to show people that anyone can do it. And now, even more than ever, I really want people to really consider running for offices in their own water, PUD, council, school board, wherever you can present. And if you can't run for candidacy, at least go to the meetings and care what's going on. Because when they know that we're watching them is when they can't, get away with the shifty business
Right.
they've been getting away with.
And bring yourself. I guess bringing a camera and taking pictures on your cell phone drives the ice guys just up the wall, as we've seen in Minnesota. We got 74 people with us. Dorothy Reich, you got a hand, and Susan Young, if you can stay with us. I want to very quickly visit the March 28th rallies, and then we want your report from Texas. So let me know if you can be with us. Dorothy Reich, welcome. How are you?
Hi. Hi, fine. I can't turn my camera on, which is probably just as well. Um, I just wanted to point out, I watch these award shows, uh, always waiting for something to happen to show that this country's turned against Trump. And last night I was rewarded in spades. I mean, it was from the opening remarks, acceptance speeches, the presenters, one after another said either out loud or subtly that we've had enough.
Yeah.
And whenever anybody made a remark, the cheers were amazing. There was nobody held back, and it was a good night. It was a good night, and I'm hoping that's going to resonate.
I hope
So,
so too. That's good. I watched the opening monologue and I'm not a big Conan fan, but I liked Conan the Barbarian. I thought Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to be the
well,
MC.
they
So
had
this way.
the film that won. One of the films that won was called Mr. Nobody versus Putin. And when they accepted the award, they said, "This is what it looks like when oligarchy takes over your country." Javier Bardem said,
Wow, good. Well, I'll have to go back and watch. But thank you for that. Thank you for that report from Hollywood, Dorothy Reich. We really
Well,
appreciate it.
I now haven't seen any of the movies, but I watch it for the presenters, and I think it was good that, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of what was the film that won, but uh,
One
Right.
battle at a time, and it was that.
Well,
It's
I
actually a
was
very
really,
big movie.
but
yeah,
it was
it's a
definitely an
great-
anti-war movie.
yeah, that's what
So
they say. I was very sorry to see that Sean Penn didn't show up. He's always great for.
he's in Ukraine.
I've met Sean Penn.
They said
He
he's
will
in.
rip your head off, man.
They said he's in Ukraine.
Oh,
He
okay.
didn't. He won a different award, and he didn't show up either.
Right. Well,
So,
he didn't get a note from his teacher, but nonetheless, Sean Penn is great at ripping people's heads off. I'll tell you Sean Penn's story someday when we have some time to fill.
have someone say free Palestine.
Yeah, that was Javier Bardem. He said free
That's what I said,
Palestine and he
yeah.
said no more wars.
Well, that's great. Thank you for that report. Myla Reson and maybe Zan and Georgion, do we have a quick report? Susan, can you stay with us for your report from Texas on the upcoming March 28th, No Kings, No Nukes? Do we have a place to direct people? I mean, it's only 2 weeks away now. Anybody want to report on no Kings, No Nukes? If not, we'll go.
Sure. I can tell people to use the great Google machine, and they will be directed. If you just put it, and Dorothy should know. It's my understanding that the events around the country have been proliferating, and I think there may be as many as 3,000 or more that are already on a website. Dorothy, do you know the website?
Go to Mobilize or 50501, and all the events are there. If you are in Los Angeles and you want to come to Topanga, where we're going to have a no ice event, because ice doesn't came to Topanga one time and they fled in fear. And
They were lucky to get out.
They were lucky to get out in one piece, but we're going to have a big No Kings event starting at 12 o'clock in Topanga Canyon. We'll be lining Topanga Canyon Boulevard, and it sounds like why would we go all the way up there? Well, because there's a lot of traffic that goes between the valley and the beach that passes through Topanga now that the road is open. So we're looking for a lot of visibility. I will say that on Friday night, one of our people had a big sign that said "Fuck Trump," and if you like him, fuck you too. And it was a big flag, and two of the guys held it up, and we never had so many honks. We had like 3 people who were upset who drove by in an hour and a half, and everybody else was honking.
Oh my God.
It was
Look
great.
at the map there. Ray McClendon, great to have you with us. I bet there's going to be a big march in Atlanta. Ray McClendon, you want to give us a report from the South? And then Susan will talk to you in Houston and then segue in to
let me make one more comment, that they're looking for a lot of smaller events. They're not looking for massive events. That's not what Indivisible wants.
All right. We'll do one here.
If you can do one in your neighborhood, good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a report on the No Kings. I'm not one of the leaders in that. I know there are definitely marches planned for Atlanta, but I'm not a part of the leadership.
Okay. Well, we're going to come back to you because we want to talk about the FBI raid on the Atlanta election board. We're going to deal with election protection next. Susan Young, you're in Houston. I don't know if you got a march coming, but we want to talk to you about the upcoming election in Houston. So
I've got a little report. You had given me a number of things to talk about, so let me go through it real quickly.
So I want to introduce Susan Young. Susan Young is the chair of the national board of the Pacifica Radio Network. So she's the equivalent of the head of CBS. And you are certainly not like her. So go ahead, Susan Young, please. A great leader in the realm of public radio. And I don't know. Okay, go ahead, Susan, please.
Okay. Hi, Sunny, Tatanka, Nancy, Myla, people I know. Let me just say that I grew up in Pacific Palisades. Our house is safe. I went to school in the East, Smith and Harvard. I worked for Big Jim Thompson in Illinois, and I went down to Houston expecting to be there for a short while, and I've been there for 30 years.
Oh my God.
So Texas is, when I first moved to Texas, Ann Richards was about to become the governor, and all 5 major cities had a woman mayor. How times have changed, but Houston is a blue dot in a red state, and we continue to fight the fight. And frankly, for the first time in a long time, I feel optimistic. Redistricting. As all of you are aware, the redistricting wars launched in Texas with enthusiastic backing from, as Jasmine Crockett calls him, Hot Wheels, and Governor Greg Abbott and disgraced AG and U.S. Senate candidate Ken Paxton. The mid-census redistricting begun in Texas met resistance and launched counter efforts. So Texas Democrats in the House left the state hiding out in Illinois to prevent quorum. They faced fines, threats. Kash Patel was called in on them. But anyway, one of the leaders of that—
Just for our radio listeners, Susan, Miss Young stuck out her tongue. Okay, go ahead.
I'll mind my P's and Q's and not say bad words. Anyway, they hiding out in Illinois, they faced fines, threats, various kinds of, threatened with jail and expulsion and so forth. One of the leaders of that effort was James Tallarico, who is now well known as the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate, and who, by the way, has got a good chance. Ultimately, the effort to defeat quorum was abandoned because the governor just said he would simply call one special session after another. The Republican goal was to shave off votes from several secure Republican districts and dilute and convert 5 safe Democratic districts to Republican. They especially targeted congressional districts for persons of color. So Jasmine Crockett, her district got drawn in a way that she was no longer in her district. The historic district that was Barbara Jordan's and Mickey Leland's, most recently Sheila Jackson Lee, it was merged with Al Green's district. This is in the Houston area. And he's the guy who always stands up and calls for impeachment and, he's kind of dramatic looking. And anyway, so those 2 were merged. There's a runoff for that in May. And that runoff, because it's a secure D seat still, will determine who the congressperson is. However, the Republicans may have overreached. They do that fairly often. There are a couple of after effects. One is that redistricting in Texas may actually backfire. The victory margins that they were working the redistricting against have slimmed. An example of that is, and this isn't a congressional district, but everybody heard about SD9 switching by 31 points. So this was a special election for a state Senate district. A total newbie, Kemet, he ran for it and he flipped the seat by 31 points.
God, that's mind-boggling. And by the way, we discussed this. We started out, and Ray McClendon's been a big part of this, and we're going to go to him next. We started out on this call 6 years ago to discuss election protection. And a big discussion through the 6 years has been gerrymandering. And the point is, if you screw up and you assume that people are going to vote your way and they flip, you can lose the seat. So I saw an interview with the woman, Hinojosa, who's been
running for
governor. She says, and Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, she says that the Republicans gerrymandered the state, assuming that the Hispanic
Hispanics. They
population,
assumed that Hispanics would continue to vote Republican, and that's part of what I'm reporting on.
go for it. Yeah, please. Go
So
ahead.
the Democratic turnout was in the primary was higher than the Republican turnout, first time since 2008 when Barack Obama and Hillary were facing up. So that's one thing. When they shaved the districts, they assumed that they would have the margins they had in 2024. They may not. The other thing is that they assumed that the Hispanic shift to the Republican Party in 2024 would continue. But a couple of things have happened. One is Hispanics, frankly, Hispanic men are very patriarchal. I think 90% of them would not vote for a woman. Okay. And so that would have worked against Jasmine Crockett. But they came out in force to support Tallarico, which is one of the reasons why he's probably a better consensus candidate. But they didn't vote Republican. And there are several things working there. As I said, they were not wild about a female candidate. But another is, and they had supported immigration reform because the Valley, which is the heavy Hispanic area, is very different from California. We don't have at all the same dynamics. And many of the people down there were experiencing a lot of influx of immigrants. There were problems for them. And also, many Hispanics in the Valley work for CPB. Okay, the state has a huge immigration, criminal, industrial complex. So we have, I believe, the most ICE detention facilities in the country. But we do not have a big outrage about it. People are showing up at Dilley, but so many people are essentially invested in the, in Border Patrol that we haven't had that same kind of rise. But the combination of tariffs and immigration and ICE have switched a lot of opinions for Hispanics. Their businesses are really hurting. And they also they believed the worst first thing. So seeing children and mothers be put in the Dilley facility and seeing their friends be at risk and seeing their hardworking people be rounded up and shipped out, it's finally gotten their attention that, oh, holy moly, this isn't maybe the people I thought that they would go after. It might be me.
Wow.
The other thing is that the second major effect was California, Prop 50. So Gavin Newsom came into Texas and he met with a couple of groups and he was absolutely great. I'm not, saying he should be anything, okay? But he was great. He said, you all in Texas led the way. We were so impressed by the Democratic legislators trying to bust quorum that we said we needed to do something to counterbalance. So I have friends who are old. I mean, I grew up in California, League of Women Voters people. They were absolutely opposed to Prop 50 because said we've worked really hard to have a reasonable system of defining districts. But I agree. I'm glad that Prop 50 happened because this is war, okay? The red states are waging war on blue states. And the Trump government is waging war on California. So we have got to level the playing field. Well, Gavin Newsom said that when they started this effort, they polled and it was 38% in support. You all know very well, 11 million people turned out and it was a 2/3 victory. So that's another thing that got kind of started by the redistricting in Texas.
So what you're saying is, and Ray McClendon will have you next, and then after him, Ray Lutz. Susan, you're saying that They thought they were going to pick up 5 seats.
And they may
may-
pick up 3 or maybe fewer. Both because the Hispanics shifted. That's the big thing.
And what do you
But
think the
also
odds
because
are?
Democratic turnout is so high that the margins have been shaved. So when they shave districts to redistrict, they reduce their margins. They reduce the safety of the Republican districts.
Wow, well, we discussed that. We said that could happen, and apparently it may. Yeah, of course, we all have to remember that come October, there will be a gargantuan tsunami of corporate money pouring into all these races. And anybody who's thinking smugly that we're going to, not smugly, but feeling comfortable that we're going to shift these states, you got to remember, look at what happened in Montana in the last Senate race. At the last minute, they just poured in, unlimited money. So
we have an example of that. You may remember Dan Crenshaw, the guy with the eye patch.
yeah.
He got targeted by Trump. I think that he voted,
Right.
to whatever, but also he was targeted by a huge, huge donor who hated him.
Right.
So
Well,
he was the only Republican not endorsed by Trump. But anyway, going on, Dallas County switching
Okay,
from
Susan,
countywide.
we got to roll on here. So kind of wrap up real quick and stay with it. I want to make sure we get Ray McClendon and Ray Lutz in.
Okay, Dallas County, they shifted it from countywide to precinct. It hugely impacted voter turnout. And that is Jasmine Crockett's home base. So there was a question about the legitimacy of the Democratic primary. The business about SAVE Act, that has come into play with the Republican primary, which you've probably seen. Trump said he was going to endorse. Whoever he didn't endorse needed to pull out. That's Paxton was expecting that. Paxton is as big a bully and asshole as is Trump. So he said, bring it, dude. What he said is, I will not pull out unless the SAVE Act passes and the Senate eliminates the filibuster. And so Trump hasn't endorsed. Cornyn said, oh, I'll vote for the SAVE Act, but that is still in play.
Wow, fantastic. All right, so Susan Young, there's a couple people I want you to meet real quick. Lynn Feinerman is on. She's a radio broadcaster. You two should be in touch, Lynn Feinerman and Susan Young. And now I want to introduce Ray McClendon. Ray is a heavy hitter. He's been with us from the start. He's in Atlanta. And Ray, you were present, unfortunately, on the FBI raid into the Atlanta election board. And we all need to hear about this and what's happening in Georgia. And then we're going to go to Ray Lutz. Susan, thank you so much for joining us. Please stay with us. That was a great report. We really appreciate it. We don't have enough people on these calls from Texas, so we're glad to have you. Go ahead, Ray.
Well, real quickly, several of the groups that we are associated with are part of a lawsuit right now in the FBI raid, and they're doing discovery and trying to get information unsealed. We know so far, as an example, that the raid was based on a warrant that was produced by some political operatives in the White House that are election deniers, and so the whole premise is supposed to be based on evidence of a potential crime, and the election denier who gave the evidence for the basis of probable cause for the warrant to the judge apparently was one of the key people that brought several of the lawsuits in 2020. As we all remember, Trump lost virtually every one of those suits. All of the different allegations that were made were completely debunked. And so this is just raising those issues again. So we know what the real issue is. What we're focusing on here in Georgia is that the real issue is setting up to take control of the ballots in November. because there is going to be a wave toward progressive candidates. And that as is going on in Fulton County, we all saw what happened in Maricopa County. This is going to be information utilized by the Trump administration as a pretext for seizing ballot boxes, for putting military personnel, ICE personnel at balloting locations in November. So what we need to be looking at now is proactively is, yes, the legal process can go on about the illegal seizing of the ballots in Fulton County, but the bigger issue is we need to do essentially some war games planning that will determine how we're going to be prepared to respond in November. It is coming. This is not a drill, and we need to be prepared for it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is our
Houston,
primary.
I bet you're going to face that in Houston, and the rest of Texas, given your governor. You're going to have to deal with issues like this.
Less
Yes.
so because we're a red state.
Oh, well, okay. Go ahead, Ray. You should
Yeah.
know Rainbow and be in touch. Go ahead, Ray, please.
Yeah. So the second thing is that we're preparing for primaries May 19th. The primary here, the big race for us nationally will be the senatorial race with Ossoff. He'll breeze through the primary. That would not be a problem. He is currently leading each of the main Republican candidates. He's leading by between 3 to 5 points in most of the polling. Ossoff is polling around 50%. But we know that is going to tighten up. It's going to be a toss-up. This is going to be a turnout race. So we're already preparing to get the vote out in Georgia with a dress rehearsal in May and then going into the election. Andrea Miller, as always, is working with us here, along with all of the members that we have. The beauty that we have here in Georgia is that approximately 34% of the eligible voters who are on the voter rolls are African American in Georgia. So we have a strong base. If we can get the turnout up in the African American community, we can essentially make the every race. The reason Georgia was lost in 2024 was because the African American turnout was below it was in 2020. And then also the misinformation, disinformation campaigns have grown tremendously since 2020. And so a part of our effort will be education and targeting misinformation campaigns in our community. So those are the things that we're looking to do over the next several months.
And we all know that when push comes to shove in the fall, hundreds of millions of dollars are going to pour in from the likes of Elon Musk and Ellison and Bezos. And so that we got to brace for that tsunami of cash coming
Yeah.
in to kill us. There, in American.
And as we say all the time, Sluggo, as you know, that's not what works in the Black community.
Right.
It is about trusted messengers out in those communities. And with 1/10 of the investment, you could get a substantial return on investment, but that goes against the political consultant class. This is something that we've been fighting over and over again, and it's just laughable that we won't make the investment in getting our core base out. With all due respect to all of the other components of the electorate, we know that over 90% of African American women have voted for progressive candidates. Even though there's been some slippage in the African American male community, is still the second highest percentage that votes for progressive candidates. And
Right.
we continually overlook that community and spend these hundreds of millions of dollars in general market ads as opposed to putting funding into the basics of turnout, which is
Right.
phone banking, text banking, canvassing, postcarding, those things that touch each person in that community directly.
That, boy,
That's what we need to do.
as my mother would say, from your lips to God's ears, but maybe to the DNC's ears finally, we can maybe this election we can finally turn that around. Beautifully said, Ray. Susan, you got a hand, and then we'll go to Ray Lutz.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. One is the Senate R's put $100 million into Cornyn's campaign. He is still likely to lose the runoff. We are at a different time in which people know how they want to vote. My question to Ray is, if you're in a safe area, are there ways that we can come to Georgia or other places and help protect voters and protect the ballots?
Yeah, we got 80 people on waiting for that answer, Ray.
Yeah, yeah. I think the important thing, and that's a great question. The important thing that we need more than volunteers is to help to raise money to support the local civic engagement volunteers that are in the street. That is the critical thing that's needed. As an example, you go into some of these communities that we specialize in, and we've been doing this for a while now. We know that it's important for people from the community to be the ones challenging folks on why they need to get out and vote. That's why I use the term trusted messenger, because these people are getting disinformation from social media. And so you have to have somebody that can connect with them. And unfortunately, it's not someone that comes in from out of state that's parachuted in for a week or two. It needs to be someone that they've seen going to their local church, or they've seen involved in other community-based issues in local board meetings or city council meetings or county commission meetings over the years. They are more willing to listen to those folks. And that's who we're connecting with. What we're putting together is the infrastructure to give those local people in each community the resources that they need to reach out. That's more effective in a big way. Now, there are some things that we think that people that are not in the state can do. One of the biggest things is postcarding. We love postcarding campaigns. Those can be done from anywhere. A national organized group can take the messaging that we do locally, do the campaigns. Andrea Miller has a great postcarding campaign that we partner with that we'll be pushing out here in Georgia. And we need volunteers for that. We'll need volunteers for phone banking. Those who will take our scripts and then push that out. But it's more for that kind of remote effort that can be done more so than people showing up from out of state.
Right.
I'd rather you raise the money, take that money instead of buying airplane tickets, and then invest in putting together a 2,000 postcard campaign or
So we'll
getting
work
people
on that.
ready
I've given
phone
to
bank.
Ossoff.
Well, Susan, you and Ray McClendon and Andrea Miller need to be, if you're meeting with the DNC, the monumental moment will be when somebody in the DNC finally figures out that they got what to do with the money, for God's sakes. Because we've been facing this for years and years. We are nonpartisan, but it's not a lesson we've had to teach the Republicans. They seem to know. So there you go. Ray, let's go to you. And also, Susan, you need to meet Lynn Feinerman. She's a radio host in California, and we want her in the Pacifica network. But Ray Lutz has been kind enough. Ray's one of the great experts on the technical aspects of election protection. And, we're looking at all these things that Trump wants to do, including disenfranchising women. I mean, the MAGA movement seems they want to reverse the 19th Amendment by demanding passports. Ray, do you want to comment on that and whatever else you got?
Well, I have to say, and I'll go Raymond in this show because everybody loves Raymond. Plus, we already have one Ray here who I don't want to compete with, because I got to tell you, everything that Ray just said, I agree with. And I just want to underline a couple of things. One is this: getting out the vote and getting people to vote is far more effective than trying to count, every last vote at the end and make sure that they haven't hacked it. Yeah, we want to do that. But if you don't get the vote out, you can't win it after the fact. Okay. So we've got to do that. And I love this idea of trying to get people prepared for the worst. And I was thinking about this a lot, that Trump and company love to fluster people. It's his whole game plan. He did it in the Apprentice in the show. He get people in there and he tried to fluster them. Poor Biden flustered in the debate. He wasn't used to people someone just lying, but his trainer should have had him trained to not get flustered. And we need to do the same. We need to be trained not to be flustered, just like a pilot is trained to not be flustered when they have to crash land their plane. And so getting ready for these various strategies that we know are going to happen. We know a few things are going to happen. Trump is going to use the FBI to try to grab ballots and so forth and take them under his control, and then come out with some sort of bogus answer at the end that they won and just say it was the fact. We've got to be prepared for that. And one thing that we're doing, and we can probably get people to help us by phone calling and stuff, but we're putting out a letter to all the secretaries of states or the people that are responsible for elections in those states, as a few of them are lieutenant governors, and the boards of election, if they have them, and ask them to secure the ballot images and the data along as the results go on in at least two places, at least two safes, so that if they come in, they can take one, but we're still have one left that we can work with, and they can't make things up. So we're hoping to get that kind of infrastructure put into place. Of course, we'll just try it. But I love this idea of getting people ready. I think we should be ready for people to need to vote in person if necessary, to have their IDs, whatever is required. And that can thwart a lot of these plans that they have. And ready for any kind of fire drills that go out at the end, the change in the precincts that happens. Oh, your precinct was changed. You can't vote this here anymore. Anything like that. That's where people on the ground that can help redirect people, get them to the right place and so forth. But there's nothing better. And that's why I don't usually pound too hard on, even though I'm involved in election auditing and trying to get the results accurate and so forth. But that is not going to go as far as getting the vote out and getting people prepared to vote.
And we know, I would, an underestimate is $1 billion is going to come at us in the fall. We know that between Musk and Bezos and Ellison and all these tech bros that have been kissing Trump's feet and other parts of his body, that all that money is come pouring in at us.
Well, there's one good thing though that now you see especially like a place like Georgia in 2020 and before 2020, they had no paper trail whatsoever. And any of these machines were just completely electronic with no way to find out anything. So had the phone call arrived, please look for 11,780, they would have just said, yes, sir, and said, change the result. They couldn't do it in 2020. And not to say that it's impossible to fix it if you have paper, because even if you have a paper record, it doesn't do much good if you don't look at it, does it?
Right.
So like in Pennsylvania, what did they audit? They had audited the state treasurer's contest instead of the all-important presidential contest. So it doesn't always work to have that paper record, but we are making progress on having that, and that is a defense against these things if we
Right.
can.
Well, we have to remember in 24, without the Democrats saying a word, all 7 swing states were won allegedly by Trump with just enough margin to not have a recall.
And not only that, but it was won by exactly 1.5000%. And that kind of drives me crazy to see that it was that close, that accurate. So
Right.
if Trump said, here's X numbers of billions of dollars and please fix it so I
Right.
win by 1.5000%, and I'll believe you if you get it accurate. It gives me the chills actually for 2024.
And Steve just put up here, we have Frank LaRose, the Secretary of State in Ohio, just gave the feds all the voter data. And that's going on all over the country. Voter data is being turned over by the states to the feds. And the line on the SAVE Act is that it could be thrown out even by this Supreme Court because it's the feds jumping in. It doesn't look like it's going to pass the SAVE Act. We're going to discuss this again next week. The two, Raymond and Ray and Susan, if you guys can come back, I know Andrea Miller is going to come next week. We need to pursue this. This is life or death. Lynn Finerman, and then we'll go back to Susan Young. Lynn,
Yes.
very
Hi.
quickly.
Yes, hi. Two things. First of all, we have to keep in mind, as I tried to put in the chat, that both Ossoff and Warnock, very good men, got an amazingly large sum of money, each of them, from AIPAC.
Okay.
We are in a situation wherein, yeah, we can get these people in, but can we expect anything on the basis of their having been given all this AIPAC money with regard to the Middle Eastern fiasco and catastrophe? That's number one. Okay. Number two, I want to introduce the phenomenon of Scott Leyendecker and Liberty Vote. This is with regard to what Raymond Lutz has been saying. Leyendecker bought Dominion Voting.
Oh yeah.
It has almost half of the voting apparatus in the United States. And Leyendecker is a rump enthusiast. He is a faithful rump follower. Therefore, we are looking at somebody who's going to be mighty, mighty tempted to do something. And we already know from Rockland County that, it was impossible for Kamala Harris to get absolutely no votes in that and so many districts wherein there was something wrong with the counting. So those 2 points I just wanted to bring into the discussion.
Raymond, thank you for that one. Absolutely on target. We had that in 2004 with the guy who owned the voting machines in Ohio. Raymond Lutz is a great expert on this, and as someone who's just changed his name, I'm sensitive to that. So anyway, go ahead, Susan Young. Thank you for that, Lynn. Ray, did you want to mention very quickly, and then Susan Young?
Yeah, so that's a good point that you brought up. We are concerned about this. I mean, in the last few years, the Republicans have stolen equipment. They've stolen the source code. They've gotten the data out of this equipment in various places in Georgia and Antrim County, Michigan, et cetera. And in, of course, in Mesa County, Colorado, where the woman there, Tina Peters, was sentenced to 13 years in prison. So it was, these are basically pale to the idea that they said, look, let's not hassle with trying to steal this stuff. Let's just buy the company. And now we'll have full control of these machines. It is a worrisome thing because what they can put in these is either last minute updates to change the results or change the configuration such that one bubble is selected for the other bubble and you don't notice that. They had a case up in New York just in the last couple of months where they had 3 contests that were inaccurate, 2 were overturned, and it was the equipment that was provided by Clear Ballot, who is a regular auditing firm in many places doing their audits. And so what a black eye for them. But it's something that we're going to have to watch, because this buyout of this company, and I've also in California, they didn't even say what their actual ownership was. They put down on the list Liberty Vote. Who owns you? We're required by law to say who the owners are. Oh, it's Liberty Vote owns Liberty Vote. I'm sorry. That doesn't help us. So we're going to be going after that and forcing them to disclose who owns them, but they'll probably sell it. I heard they might have already sold it to someone else. So they're going to try to move this thing around enough so that we can't track them down. But we're working on tracking them down. We might have to take that to court to figure out who to make them file it correctly.
Well,
but
you know, what's got us going in Ohio 2004 was that the owner of the voting machines was the chairman of the Republican campaign for Bush.
yeah,
It's the same
and
guy.
of course, Kerry didn't make it then, did they? And they had the book written, the evidence of a crime, written about that whole thing.
Yeah.
Things are a little bit better now because we do have the paper record. That's one benefit. And so I'm hopeful that people are starting to wake up to this war crimes and so forth going on right now that we've got to stop. So it is critical. It's critical that we can save this.
Okay, Raymond Lutz, Ray McClendon, Susan Young, did you want to say something further, please? Or are you?
Yes, I did. I've put some stuff in the chat about Dallas County. Also, Al Green is great, but he's likely to lose to a younger guy. I just wanted to make a quick comment about AIPAC. So I was in a donor group talking to Talarico's people, and one guy was saying he is not supportive enough of Israel, and another person on the call said that being pro-Israel, anti-Palestinian is a death for younger voters. So what I try to advise people to do is go to J Street.
Okay, one last thing before we leave this topic. We're going to do this again next week. Andrea Miller will join us. We still have 81 people with us. This call has the longest attention span in the world. Camilla Reese, who's just joined us, she and I, along with Ray and some others, put together a website 2 years ago. It's called the People's Hub, and it's designed to use for election protection. And it's kind of up for grabs now. We want to show it next week. Andrea will be with us, Raymond, Susan, if you can join us. And we want to talk about using this website. So everybody who's on, if you're over the next week, go to www.usgrassroots.org. usgrassroots.org. Take a look at the website, Ray. If you miss us next week, sorry, but anyway, I know Andrew will be with us. We want to evaluate this website for future use. We put a lot of work into it. It's a good website. Has a place to list all the organizations that are available. So again, usgrassroots.org. Take a look. Camilla, next couple of weeks, you'll be with us, and we will see if we can rehab this website. Susan Young, Ray McClendon, Raymond Lutz, thank you so much, you guys. And we're going to keep on this, obviously. This is the key election protection for 2026. I do not think he's going to be able to cancel the election. We do know that we should probably be expecting an alleged attack from Iran to allow Trump to try and declare martial law. And we're going to have to discuss that in great detail next week as well. So please do join us. John Steiner, Margot King, great to see you. Anna Georgia, you're with us. So we're going to move into the world of the nukes now. And then at the half hour, 6:30 Eastern time, we're going to have a great expert on the Epstein files. And we're going to go the second half hour coming up We're going to dive greatly into the Epstein files. You may want to take a shower afterwards. Anna Georgie, did you want to jump in? And then we're going to jump into the nuclear issue with Kevin Kamps, Diane DiRigo, Karl Grossman, and Roger Rapoport. Anna Georgie, did you want to put in on the No Nukes, No Kings Day before we move ahead? Anna, you there? No, you're still not.
Thanks. Just got home.
Okay.
Didn't want to miss the voter registration part. I want postcards. We'll do that. So I think the idea is spreading around groups that are in battle with old nukes and new nukes and AI. And let's just hope that as we get closer to the No Kings, No Nukes, and the anniversary of TMI, that can present it as a time for a consciousness shift around this war and around that we have to get more active. Coming out is important, but it's what you do afterwards. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anna. You're in Western Mass there, continuing your great work. We appreciate that. I did put up a piece at laprogressive.com and then freepress.org, also Smirking Chip, a few other places, about the danger of somebody hitting one of our 94 reactors with a drone. Yeah. And, anybody we're all downwind, for God's sakes. Diablo Canyon is is upwind. There's the piece at freepress.org. Thank you. I want to take a look and spread it around. The terror that we all live with is it would take one drone, God forbid, to take down a nuclear reactor. And they're all yelling and screaming about nuclear weapons. Putin is terrorizing the nuclear reactors in Ukraine. And there's actually been a UN resolution about it. So we all live downwind from these horrific reactors, and we need to be aware that they need to shut as soon as possible. So that'll be part of March 28th, Anna, and everybody, when we're all out marching for No Kings. We need to shut these reactors. And just remember, Donald Trump has personal investments in fusion, and he's the one who totally controls the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Not a great combination. Steve Caruso, did you want to jump in real quick, please?
Yes. Intrinsically follow this site. This will hold new article. They go into details of the power centers that are controlling the elections, how they did it in detail. They evaluated the Florida elections, and they came up with this fake county that had 3 million votes. I mean, it's all spelled out in black and white. Not only does the DDHQ, which is the election folks that are showing you on TV what the results are, they came in and reversed vote counts and changed things around to suit their candidate. The company is run and owned by folks affiliated with the Trump regime right now. So this is all part of the scheme for them to steal the election. We have to look out at the finer details of this in order to make sure we have our butts covered in the fall. Thank you.
Yeah, big deal. And we will be discussing that again at the top of the hour next week. Thank you, Steve Caruso, for engineering, and thank you for bringing that up. It's a big deal. So let's go to Karl Grossman and Kevin Kamps talking about the nuclear issue straightforward. And Ron Leonard is also with us. There's all this fluff flying around now that the Gulf War with Iran is a big opportunity for nuclear. It's also a big opportunity for renewables. And we're seeing that play in. Karl, and then Ron Leonard, if you want to comment, and then Kevin Kamps. And we're expecting Diane DiRigo. I don't see her. And then Roger Rapoport. Karl, do I mention what's happening in New York with the latest? Oh, you're muted. And let me unmute Kevin also. Kevin, you may at some point. There you go. Go ahead, Karl.
Yeah, I mentioned this last week, but I think the big issue in New York is this push to restart the Indian Point nuclear plants. That they're 25 miles from New York City, and there was an event about 2 weeks ago now, in which the U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who, for folks who aren't familiar with Wright's background, it's fracking. So from one heinous environmental assault to insult to another goes Chris Wright, and he was there with a congressman named Mike Lawler, who was in the area of the Indian Point plants, pushing a restart of the Indian Point plants. And here's a quote from Wright: "Decisions in recent years to close nuclear plants were foolish." And again, that's, I think, a big nuclear issue in New York. Beyond the governor of New York, and also mentioned this last week, Hochul, declaring that I embrace nuclear power and pushing it in all kinds of ways in New York State, including a bailout of 4 decrepit nuclear plants upstate New York and pushing new nuclear plants. She wants 5 gigawatts of new nuclear power in New York, which is the equivalent of 5 large nuclear power plants.
It's ridiculous. And we're hearing rumblings. Thank you for that, Carl. We're hearing rumblings from Europe. Ron Leonard, if you can unmute, there are some Europeans who are saying that they should have had more nuclear plants, and not dealing with the reality that any nuclear plant in Europe, as anywhere else, is vulnerable to drone attacks from the Russians. And you don't need a nuclear bomb if your enemy has a nuclear power plant. We got 94 here in the U.S. Every one of them vulnerable, and God knows the ones in Europe are vulnerable. Ron Leonard, are you able to speak? Can we hear you?
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, you're good. You're good.
The whole thing is really a matter of dollars and cents. And what sense we're talking about is nonsense. What we're getting out of the governor's office is that we should invest another $33 billion over 20 years, 30 years in nuclear power plants, because that's the way to take ratepayers' money and use it for the future, rather than fix the grid, put clean energy on the grid, and reduce ratepayers' costs and make the grid more reliable.
Well,
Now,
I want to talk, Ron, you're an expert in renewables as one of the godfathers. Virginia has just passed something, and everybody on the call needs to understand this. Utah has also passed what's called balcony solar. Can you explain balcony solar and why it's so important? This is a big deal.
well, a balcony solar, a euphemism for hang your solar collector outside your house, doesn't necessarily have to be on a balcony. But what you're doing with that solar collector is not going through a rigmarole of large amounts of energy. You're just taking that solar collector, slapping an AC inverter on each individual solar collectors, and literally plugging it into the wall, because it's going to be limited to something to the tune of less than a kilowatt of energy. But it just is simple to do, and panels are so cheap to make that it can be done. And what we're seeing is people are strapped. They are literally getting their utility bill doubled on a yearly basis, and it's unacceptable. So if the governor says, well, we need to have more nuclear power, well, nuclear power is 10 times more expensive, people are getting raked over the coals on the cost of energy now, how do you think that's going to work out for you, Governor, when people go to the voting booth?
Well, now the point is, I was going to put solar panels on my roof here in LA, and the company went bankrupt. So, but can I now plug in solar panels just to my house behind the meter? And what impact will that have? And how about everybody listening on this call?
Well, you only are able to do it in a couple of places, Utah and obviously now Virginia. Whether that becomes the rule of thumb, we don't know. But the fact is, solar is cheaper, it's faster to install, and whether you only put in 2 panels or you put in 10 panels, it's the right thing to do because otherwise, the utility, the monopoly that's providing the power to your home right now, is just going to keep ratcheting up the cost. That's not a good alternative.
Okay, so how critical, well, we're going to be interviewing Scott Wiener, who's put in a balcony solar bill here in California. How significant is that? And in the bigger picture, give us a thumbnail. How is the Iran war affecting the spread of renewables? I actually saw an article in the New York Times, which kind of blew me away, that was in there, saying that in China, they're not really being affected by the Iran war because they have so much solar and because half the cars in China are electric. And then we'll go to Kevin Kamps, who appears to have moved to his car.
Well, again, it's a numbers game because if you look at the number of gigawatts that we install in the United States, and actually that number is likely to go down slightly this year, it's in this 50 gigawatt range. Whereas in China, last year it was 300 gigawatts, also likely to go down slightly this year. But there's a vast difference between 50 and 300. And we're in basically the outback of renewable energy, whereas many logical, big end users of commercial power to build up their economy have figured out that, oh, I should really do something that's smart for the economy, smart for the ratepayers, will provide us with the lower cost of energy. And I was just talking to my friend, Richard, who has come up with a way to analyze a grid and make it so that the entire grid can run on 100% renewable energy. That's been a breakthrough in terms of the analysis of a grid. So look up Dr. Richard Perez.
I will indeed. Thank you for that so much, Ron Leonard. Kevin Kamps, you're in the belly of the beast here in Western Michigan. What's the latest with renewables and with Palisades in Michigan?
Well, I'm more up to speed with Palisades. As
Go for
folks
it.
have heard from me in the past on this show, it just shows how far gone nuclear safety is in the United States that Holtec is being allowed to restart Palisades. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is very complicit in this unprecedented endeavor. It's not unprecedented worldwide. There was a reactor restarted from closed status in Soviet Armenia in 1989, 3 years after the Soviet nuclear industry blew up Chernobyl, the worst nuclear disaster in history. So if we're following the example of the Soviet nuclear industry, it's bad news, but we are. So Palisades, the latest is there was a major technical meeting between the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Holtec on February 9th, so a month ago now, where the latest safety scandal, and I saw that Roger Rapoport has joined the call. We talked about this last week on this show. The latest scandal is something that we've sort of known about for a long time, since at least 2006, that the lid of the reactor needs to be replaced at Palisades. And what's come to light recently is that the welding on the pressurizer nozzles, which are very safety critical, they contain the primary coolant water that cools the reactor while it's operating, are of dubious welding. And it's so dubious that they can't even provide the documentation about what they've got. And so what they would ask of the NRC, it's called regulatory relief, is please let us not have to worry about those documents that we likely destroyed or the previous owner destroyed, despite our best efforts to prevent that document destruction in real time in 2020, 2021, 2022. But the NRC let them destroy the documents because Palisades was closing. So why do we need the documents? So those documents were destroyed. And now what they would like to do is what they call proxy. materials. They look at apples and oranges. They look at other plants. They say, oh, this metallurgy is very close to what we have at Palisades, so everything's fine, right? So this is just the latest of a dozen major safety systems at Palisades that are at the breaking point and have allowed to get worse and worse over decades, the past decade or 15 years, because Palisades was going to close. So why would we care? Why would we do the inspections? Why would we do the maintenance? And the crazy part is it's actually gotten worse since the plant was shut down and Holtec took over. Self-inflicted wounds. That's how the steam generator tubes, which were already bad, the whole steam generators needed replacement. Holtec made it worse by neglecting basic maintenance for 2 years, from 2022 to 2024. And the list goes on and on and on. So it's hard to tell when the restart will take place. NRC has to report back on this latest safety scandal on April 8th. There may be further rounds of requests for additional information, but they're still full steam ahead as soon as they can get away with it. We have a federal lawsuit. We have more federal lawsuits up our sleeves. We don't really have the resources. Our lawyers are not getting paid for a long time now, but they're willing to still go forward. We're going to fight it, keep fighting it, but we are outgunned in all kinds of ways, and we'll just do our best.
Well, no doubt. And Kevin Kamps, thank you for being on the front lines there in Western Michigan. I was looking for Diane D'Arrigo. I do not see her. Diane, we had planned on you speaking, but Kevin Kamps, how do people reach you?
Yeah, I put it in the chat. My email, it's a new one, is kevin.kamps@proton.me. And my phone number is area code 269-217-6326. And I put the Don't Waste Michigan website in the chat. That's my affiliation right now, is board of directors member for Don't Waste Michigan.
Thank you so much, Karl. Thank you. We now got, I don't see Diane D'Arrigo. We've got Roger Rapoport. Roger is the tip of the spear here. This it's impossible to overstate the importance of the Palisades issue. If we can stop Palisades from going back online, which I am 100% convinced we can, partly because of Roger's reporting, but we also have this issue now with the Iran war of the vulnerability of commercial reactors to drone strikes. Karl, you want to give us 8 minutes on what you got? I'm sorry, Roger. Roger Rapoport,
I'm ready,
the great reporter here. Go ahead from Western Michigan.
Okay, so I just put on the chat an image of a Iranian drone hitting a U.S. radar at the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Manama, Bahrain. This is from February 28th. This is the level of protection that our U.S. Navy has on a military base from a terrorist drone. But there's something really important about this. And you can see this is actually not hitting a nuclear site. It's hitting a radome, a radar site. But as you can see, okay. Are we still there?
Yes, Harvey,
Okay.
you're muted, and we can't really play video. I can share the link or the one image. I hope we don't get busted for that. Harvey, you're muted. He's on the phone. Sorry,
Okay.
Roger.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so go carry on, Roger. Harvey's
Okay.
on the
All
phone.
right. So in this link, you can see Iranian drone hitting a Navy base, a radome. Now, here's what's really interesting about this. You could argue for quite a while about whether or not that drone might have penetrated a containment on a reactor like Palisades, okay? But what you can argue is that all the new reactors that our government is in the process of licensing, and now we're talking about these so-called small nuclear reactors that Holtec is building 4 of them, and the Trump family is working on it and so on. Keep in mind that they will not have the containment domes that exist at Palisades. So in some cases, for example, on the military bases, we're talking about the kind of shielding you might see at a rent space, literally just a metal building, okay? And as you saw with this video, and I can send the link again, or you can contact me at my email and I'll send it to you. The Navy was unable to stop a drone that hit a radome that would be comparable to one of these small, so-called small reactors. And on top of that, there's something else that's really, really important. In order to make a nuclear weapon, which is the whole reason that we're now in this war in Iran, which is to stop them from a potential nuclear attack, you need one of two things. You need plutonium or highly enriched uranium. Now, at this point, Bill Gates, for example, who's building a new reactor in Wyoming with $2 billion of our money and, of course, some of his own, Bill Gates was planning to get his highly enriched uranium from, guess where? Russia. Of course, that's not working out. So now there's an attempt, of course, to create this kind of fuel here. But there's another source, and this is pretty important, plutonium, which could be extracted, presumably from spent fuel. That would be difficult. But there's another way to get plutonium, and that is from the pits from nuclear weapons that have been trashed, basically disabled. And for many, many years, 50 years, in fact, there's been a non-proliferation agreement that essentially means that you cannot operate a nuclear reactor, certainly in this country, with highly enriched uranium because that could potentially be used for a country like Iran to build nuclear weapons. So one of the people who opposed this or supported this idea was President Donald Trump during his first administration. But he's changed his mind. And that means that, first of all, that highly enriched uranium potentially can be used in reactors, especially these newer reactors. And more to the point, the plutonium pits that can be, shall we say, refined, reprocessed, so to speak, Trump is now talking about making them available. So what that means is a country like Saudi Arabia or a country like South Korea or Japan could buy this plutonium for a new reactor. Could be a small reactor or light water, probably not a light water reactor because that takes too long. And that means that the non-proliferation treaty would go bust. And these countries potentially could take this plutonium that presumably is going to be used in a peaceful nuclear power plant and convert it to atomic weapon fuel. And this fact is something that has not really percolated. But what it means is that everything we're fighting for, all these lives that are being lost, all this bombing that's going on, all this attempt to curb their oil, all the sacrifices that the military is making and the soldiers are making is kaput because Trump has decided after 50 years to jettison the non-proliferation agreement. When you couple that with this video that I just sent you, or you can find it on New York Times, and if anybody wants it, I can send you a link to it. What it means is this new generation of reactors, like the ones that Holtec wants to build, without containment, are vulnerable to a attack by a drone. And other countries like Saudi Arabia would be in a position to take this plutonium fuel and ultimately convert it to nuclear weapons. So the entire logic behind the war that we're now in the middle in is completely being undercut by the same guy who authorized the strike.
Unbelievable. I apologize, by the way, if I was interfered with your audio there, Roger.
No, it's okay.
So I want to emphasize that Roger Rapoport is top of the line here in terms of national reporting, and this report is devastating. Does anyone want to comment on this? I mean, Roger, the whole war. Well, where to begin? They're actually talking now about. Well, Steve Caruso, go ahead, and then I'll come back. Steve has had his hand up for a while. And Roger, you just recently, in terms of Palisades, had a major op-ed in the Detroit Free Press, which is the biggest paper in Michigan. And we have to emphasize again, as I have before, we've got Karl Grossman, Kevin Kamps. I thought we were going to have Dee DeRigo. Maybe I'm missing her. But this fight over Palisades is the most important fight on restarting nuclear in the country. And your reporting is number one in terms of exposing the situation. Steve Caruso, go ahead, please.
Yeah, you see in the Ukraine war recently how the Ukrainians are stepping up their drone game. They're letting the Russians come in. They're bombing Ukraine with like 400 drones, and then the Ukrainians just follow up and just take control of the whole situation with their drones, and then they send their troops in and keep moving forward. And the Russians are caught off guard without their telegram. They've lost their internet completely. That whole thing with the drones and trying to sidestep all these big antiquated legacy missile kind of things is the next step. We don't need this. We don't need the nukes. We don't have the time, and we don't have the money for it. And it's just a big power grab, right? Thanks.
So if I could just add this point, and Kevin can articulate it, you don't have to hit the containment to disable the plant. And Kevin can explain this in more detail. He's been following this for over 30 years, and he is the master at getting the government to understand. This is one of the reasons why the plant hasn't reopened. We can credit Kevin Kamps with this, because, as he points out, this drone that just hit the radome in Bahrain on a Navy base could easily disable, the same thing could disable Palisades without even hitting the containment, right, Kevin?
Yeah, I was going to bring it up, and you brought it up. There's a line from David Lochbaum, retired from Union of Concerned Scientists, that if you kill the brain, the body will follow. His point was, if you take out the control room at a nuclear power plant, which is not in radiological containment, that's all she wrote. You can't cool it. You can't shut it down. And it's not just the control room. There are multiple soft spots on nuclear power plants. And, I think I talked about it last week, perhaps on the show, that Palisades, in addition to its safety risks, has made a mockery of security for decades. And the most salacious one of all was it garnered the front page of Esquire magazine in May of 2007. Tom Junot, the article was Mercenary. It was about the fact that the head of security at Palisades was a complete fraud. He was a chimney sweep for a day job and a failed screenplay writer. But he talked his way into that.
His role at the nuclear plant was played by Dick Van Dyke. So there we go.
Well, he fooled Entergy. He fooled the previous owner, Consumers Energy. He fooled the Michigan State Police, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the FBI. It's just one example of the security breaches that are probably existent across the country, but we know about the ones at Palisades. And there's so many soft spots that can be taken out in various ways by attackers. And I wanted to comment on the proliferation risks that are getting worse now. The fuel of choice for new reactors is called high assay low enriched uranium, HALEU, HALEU. And it's borderline bomb grade. It's instead of 3% or 5% enriched uranium-235 like nuclear reactors used to use in the commercial industry, they're now flirting with 20%. And what it means is that you can go from 20% to 90% without a whole lot of extra work. It's not linear. It's an acceleration enrichment process. So that's a proliferation risk. And like Roger mentioned, now Trump is trying to throw weapons-grade plutonium into the commercial nuclear fuel mix. He wants to give it away. And if that involves the military plutonium, we have unimaginable amounts of weapons-grade plutonium access to military needs. It's in storage, which is itself a proliferation risk. But if they start commercializing it, the proliferation risks are hard to overstate.
This is just absolutely terrifying. And you have to remember, and by the way, I apologize again if I had to leave briefly. Our next guest, Nick Bryant. Nick, welcome. Welcome. We're going to get to you in a minute. But as you can hear, this is global stuff. What's really terrifying, what puts it all in perspective, Myla Reson, I'll get you next, and then we'll go back to Roger. Donald Trump has personal financial investments in the nuclear power industry. The Trump crime family just bought major shares in a fusion in a company, and we've never been fans of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. He has basically, Elon Musk went in and terrorized the NRC, fired 100 people, and Trump has fired a chairman of the NRC, which has never happened before. So basically, we have effectively no regulation on a safety basis that's in any way reliable on the 94 atomic reactors in the country. And the piece that the Free Press ran of mine basically warns against the fact, as Kevin has mentioned, and Roger, that nuclear reactors, of which there are 94 on our soil, are totally vulnerable to a $500 drone. That's the bottom line here. Myla Reson and then Roger Rapoport.
I just want to say this is such an important discussion, but unfortunately, we're up against the tyranny of the clock. And we're so privileged now to have Nick Bryant with us. An extraordinary, I just want to say that his time is valuable and we're lucky to have him with us.
Yes, thank you, Myla. We appreciate that. Nick, we'll get to you in a minute. I hope you're getting an earful. I heard over the phone you did not know that Bill Gates is sponsoring small modular reactors. This guy, it just proves that you can have $20 billion and still be a complete idiot. Bill Gates is, and quote me on this, Bill Gates is a nuclear idiot. He's sponsoring small modular reactors, about which Roger Rapoport is about to tell us still more. Roger?
So what I want to emphasize is what Kevin is talking about. The small modular reactors are the answer to the fact that the light water reactors can't get any financing and they take 15 years and only 2 of them have been built. But the key point is, in terms of defense on these plants, whether you hit, first of all, they won't have containment, but even the older plants, as Kevin has pointed out, are vulnerable. And if the United States Navy cannot shoot down a drone that hits a radome that is a large, very critical piece of infrastructure, it stands to reason that the security team at a place like Palisades, which is, by the way, going to build these new reactors that don't have containment, is not going to be able to handle it. And that's a security risk when you add in this plutonium that Trump is now going to offer widely, at a deep discount or whatever discount he wants to do. To supposedly peaceful use, it opens all kinds of doors far beyond the threat posed by Iran.
Right. And, I raised in another context, I raised the idea of the Iranians, God help us, hitting the Diablo Canyon reactor with a drone. And they said, well, this person said, well, how are they going to get a drone all the way from Iran? I've been to San Luis Obispo. There is a Walmart there.
Yeah.
So, or if they're boycotting, maybe a Target where you can walk in and get a drone, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
This is the worst. And they're not, the media, for what it's worth, is not dealing with this. I have yet to see a report on any major media of the vulnerability of commercial atomic reactors to drone strikes. And it's a big, big deal in Ukraine. Putin is taking out nuclear reactors left and right in Ukraine with tremendous danger to the point that we got a UN resolution on it. This is absolutely terrifying. Vina Colley, and then we're going to segue out of nuclear. Roger Rapoport, your greatest. I'm sorry to miss Diane Diorigo. I hope I wasn't cursing too loud on the phone. But Roger, it's always an honor to have you on. Kevin Kamps, Karl Grossman. We have a tremendous team on the nuclear issue. We're going to keep doing it. Vina Colley, and then we're going to segue in, as if we're not dealing with dirty radioactivity enough. We're going to go into the Epstein files with Nick Bryant, who is one of the great experts. And we're, as Myla has pointed out, we're really privileged to have him with us. Vina Colley from Portsmouth, Ohio, and then we're going to visit Epstein here.
Well, I keep hearing people talk about high assay low enriched uranium, and Piketon has been doing that since October of 23. My thoughts with them, we reprocessed reactor fuel for 70 years. Are we doing processing there in the high assay low enriched uranium, or are we making bomb grade material? What are we doing? Because I've heard that we can feed these small modular reactors, and they're planning on putting 3 small modular reactors on site with the databases plus a gas power plant. So we've got a lot going on here at Piketon, and it just doesn't seem that it's getting any national attention.
Roger, you may want to connect with Vina. Vina is regular with us from Portsmouth, Ohio, and that's where the HALU in the Americans continent is supposed to come from. We're getting it from Russia right now. And by the way, the person who's making out the most like a bandit on the Iran war is Putin, because he's now selling his oil and gas or whatever it is, for gargantuan amounts of money. And every night, Putin goes to sleep laughing about the Iran war after he gives them intelligence about our military operation. It's outrageous. So listen, Roger, Kevin, Carl, thank you so much, Vina. We're going to segue because, and it's an easy segue to talk about Epstein, because we know that Epstein was close to both Trump and Putin. And Nick, you've been billed as one of the great experts on Epstein. Maybe you can talk to us a bit about the money laundering aspect. We're hearing all about the sex trafficking, and rightly so. But wasn't Epstein involved with Trump and Putin financially? And was he involved, as David K. Johnston has said, with the money laundering side of it?
He was involved with money laundering, but I'm not specifically the point that you're making. I'm not familiar with Putin, but I know that he was involved with money laundering. He was also involved with arms dealing too. And
so, Epstein was an arms dealer?
Yeah, he was an arms dealer.
Who did he sell arms to?
He did it with Ehud Barak, who's a really nasty piece of work, and they sold arms to Mongolia. And also they sold a surveillance system to the dictator of Ivory Coast and also Nigeria. So they were busy selling arms, pandering.
And what about with the Russians? Were they involved with Putin at all?
No, I think that's been kind of overblown because people, I think the people in the media want us to focus on Epstein's connections to Russia before we focus on Jeffrey Epstein's connections to the Mossad and also the CIA.
Okay, well, one thing before we jump in, Roger Rapoport and Karl Grossman and Kevin Kamps, if you will post, please, in the chat how people can get a hold of you, and we will continue to have you back to talk about these nuclear issues, which are absolutely critical. And I want to talk again next week about the vulnerability of reactors. Between Carl, Kevin, Roger, and I, we have about 3,000 years of experience with the nuclear issue, and I have never been more terrified about nuclear power than I am now, given the fluidity of the situation with the drones. So thank you for that. Please put those contacts in the chat. So Nick Bryant, you are an expert in the Epstein situation, and what do you got, my man?
Well, I've been investigating Epstein since October of 2011. That was the first time I went down to Florida. And I have a PowerPoint that's very good that shows the latest release of documents. And
yes, you can do a PowerPoint, but you have to be verbal with it because we're on the radio as well. So be verbal. And remember also that the very first story, I believe, linking Epstein to Les Wexner was broken in Columbus by Bob Fitrakis.
Yeah, I know Bob. I know Bob.
Well, Bob and I are co-conspirators on election protection, and I never got a death threat from Jeffrey Epstein, but he did. So there you go. Have you had death threats yet from the Epstein camp?
I've had death threats from some other camps, but I've never had a death threat from.
Well, not Kevin Kamps anyway. But go ahead now and tell us what the latest and what we need to know now going forward about the Epstein situation.
Okay, can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Until we see rich men being perk-whopped to jail, this is still a cover-up.
Okay, so we're going to start with the PowerPoint. And yikes, I'm in the emails. I was in the Epstein emails because I was down there poking around in October of 2011. And I was calling Epstein's Inner Circle. I was able to get his black book in October of 2011. And I called some victims, and they confirmed that Epstein was trafficking children internationally and nationally. And then I started to call his Inner Circle, and here is these are the names of people in his inner circle. We don't know who this email was sent from, but it says, just a heads up, there is a journalist calling around again. His name is Nick Bryant. This is what he looks like, so you all are aware. And then they have a picture of me. I don't know what picture they used of me, but hopefully it was a nice picture.
So
but,
you have names here. Can you read the names and tell us what the relevance is here of the names on this redacted email?
Sure. If I get into all the names, this could go
No,
very
no,
long.
just the important ones. We're going to go to.
Okay, these are two of Epstein's henchwomen, Jojo Fontanella and Lynn Fontanella. Darren Indike is his attorney. Richard Kahn is his accountant. Larry Voskoski is one of the pilots that he uses to transport underage girls. And Ann Rodriguez is a nasty piece of work, and she was into logistics. So,
all right, so let's get to the ending. Let's spill the ending here. Where is this taking us? Where are we going to go with this?
You are going to go into the darker recesses of humanity and really show what a criminal enterprise Jeffrey Epstein was and how malignant it was. Because you've heard things about Jeffrey Epstein, but I've vetted these emails and I've investigated these emails, and I'm going to tell you which emails are true, which emails are false. There's disinformation here, there's misinformation, and then some of these emails are just dripping with evil.
Well, then the question then becomes: does this implicate Donald Trump deeply enough to bring him down?
I think that could possibly happen with the documents we have at this point. I don't believe so, but there was a woman that filed a lawsuit against him, and her name was Katie Johnson. She said that she'd been molested by Trump and Epstein when she was 13. There was a woman that filed a corroborating affidavit, and Lisa Bloom represented Katie Johnson. And Katie Johnson, she deposited Katie Johnson. Katie Johnson was living in San Diego. She deposited Katie Johnson in a hotel and then picked her up the next morning and said, "You're going to be at a press conference." And it was when Hillary and Trump were neck and neck. And I think that Lisa Bloom wanted to use Katie Johnson for political expediency. And at that point, it was too much for her. And then there had also been threats. So she ultimately recanted. And she's the one that has the most on Trump, but she did recant. But I spent 3 years looking for her. I really wanted to know what she was saying was true. And I found her after 3 years. And she wouldn't talk to me, which was kind of a drag, but that happens in these types of investigations where you can look for someone for a very long time and finally find them, and then all of a sudden they just don't want to talk.
Well, I saw an email with a woman whose face was blanked out, posed as Katie Johnson. And I have to say, I have never heard a more horrifying account of sexual abuse than what she laid out in that email.
Well, there's
YouTube.
There's a lot of horrifying accounts in these emails. If you want me to go through the emails, I can go.
Yes, go ahead. It's your show now. I wanted to ask the question that's on everybody's mind. Do we have what we need to move Trump out of there?
Katie Johnson is living in the Southwest. She's selling real estate. She's in a relationship. Her and her boyfriend go to Europe, and she's put together a good life for herself, and she just doesn't want to be bothered. I understand. She's frightened. But anyway, this is proceed with caution, because some of these emails have disinformation, some of them have misinformation, and some of them, I said, are dripping with evil. This is a little bit of both here. This is an email from someone who's redacted to Epstein, and Epstein got a torture video from the guy. And Epstein says, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." And it's supposedly, it's supposedly sent from Peter Mandelson, who was the UK ambassador to the United States. But actually, That's disinformation or misinformation, one or the other, because it wasn't sent by Peter Mandelson. It was sent by Sultan Ahmed Boum Salim, and he and Jeffrey Epstein were very good friends, and he's a billionaire from the United Arab Emirates, and they like to exchange torture videos with each other.
Oh, torture of what? Of who?
I'm assuming girls. And this is another email about torture from Martin Nowak, who is a professor, a mathematician, and also a science professor at Harvard. And he says to Epstein, our spy was captured after completing her mission. And then Epstein replies, they're obviously using some kind of code. And Epstein replied, did you torture her? So I decided to send Martin Nowak an email saying what he was thinking about. And I said, my name is Nick Bryant. I'm a journalist, and I emailed you earlier, but you haven't returned my email. Regarding the attached email that you sent to Jeffrey Epstein, I would like to know if you were referring to literal torture, and if so, were you referring to torturing an adult or a minor? Best, Nick Bryant. And he never got back to me. I was hurt by that. I sent him to emails.
Yeah,
but
right.
Harvard has put him on leave. That's what he looks like right there. That is Martin Nowak, and Harvard has put him on leave. So I don't think we're going to be hearing much from Martin Nowak again, at least in a university setting. And I'll skip this one.
Joyce Carol Oates?
Yeah, it was something that she posted, but it turned out to be wrong. So again, this is proceed with caution. This is an FBI report, and it talks about Jeffrey Epstein torturing a girl, a white female that was aged 11 through 13. And
she was 11, and the FBI
but okay, this is also, when I said proceed with caution, this is not a truthful report. This report was debunked a number of years ago. I've been investigating Epstein since 2011, so this report was debunked a long time ago. We're going to get into some cognitive dissonance now, because when you go forward with these emails, it's the antithesis of what moral people would do or ethical people would do, that it produces cognitive dissonance. And I think that that's how this type of evil hides itself. It hides itself with lies, and it also hides itself with cognitive dissonance, because people just don't want to think other people can be that evil. So this one is entitled The Banality of Evil. When Hannah Arendt was looking at Adolf Eichmann's trial, she looked at him as just like this innocuous bureaucrat, and that's where she came up with The Banality of Evil. This is Mark Tramo. He's was a neuroscientist at UCLA, and he's got an MD and a PhD. And he sent an email to Epstein, and he was talking about how to enhance the sucking abilities of newborns. And I've been researching and writing about child trafficking for a long time, but even this one kicked me in the gut: how to enhance the sucking ability of infants. So this is from UCLA. Trammell removed from the UCLA website. So we're dealing with people that are very, very twisted. And this is about multiple perpetrators. And I know the progenitor of this document, of this report. So I believe that it's truthful. And it's about a girl. The photo shows a girl, her face visible, who looks pubescent with medium length dark hair. Several Caucasian men are holding the girl's legs spread open. And I won't go any further than that, because then it gets really ugly. But so they were vicious. And there's this apocrypha out there that the youngest girl was 14 years old, but actually I've known that there were girls under the age of 12 or even 10 for a number of years. And I've also known that these pedophiles some of them were extremely sadistic. And here's a deposition by Virginia Giuffre from 2015. She is the prominent Epstein victim who sued a number of different people, including Ghislaine Maxwell and also Prince Andrew. And this is a deposition that she gave in 2015, where she said, Epstein, Brunel, and Maxwell loved orgies with kids. That is having sexual interactions with many young teenagers at the same time. Sometimes as many as 10 underage girls would participate in a single orgy with them. I personally observed dozens of these orgies. These orgies happen in Epstein's Island, in the US Virgin Islands, in New Mexico, Palm Beach, and many other places. So he was, and there were, it was just more than Epstein, Brunel, and Maxwell that were involved. Prince Andrew was in one of those orgies that Virginia talked about.
Now, she allegedly committed suicide.
She did commit suicide. I knew her pretty well, and I wrote an article. You can go to my blog, Nick Bryan NYC. I wrote a pretty protracted article. There were people saying that she was killed by the Mossad and that she was alive and living with Jeffrey Epstein, but she had been traumatized. Her life was, she had had a vicious life. Her father started molesting her when she was six. He farmed her out when she was 8. She was sent to a very draconian, vicious institution when she was 12. And she was selling herself on the streets when she would run away from that place. And and her husband started to beat her up. And I think that was the critical mass of trauma that where she killed herself. But anyway, she tried to kill herself twice over the previous year. But this is about Leon Black. Leon Black's worth $5 billion. He's one of the wealthiest men in the world. And this is about a girl that's 7 or 8. And Leon Black is biting her genitalia and making it very painful for her. This is a report from the Southern District of New York.
God.
And here we go with more child abuse material. Now, the feds say that Epstein and Maxwell acted alone, but that's pure bullshit. And Pam Bondi, right here, said tens of thousands of videos, and then Epstein with children or child porn, and there were hundreds of victims. So she said that there was multiple examples of child pornography, and Epstein was participating in it. And now they walked that back and said that he downloaded all his child abuse material from the internet. So she's lying. And actually, she said this in Newsweek in May 7th of 2025.
And she said that under oath to the
Yes.
Congressional Committee.
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple examples of perjury. If I got into all those examples of perjury, we would be here for a very long time. And this is more child abuse material. Epstein was sent, we don't know who sent this, but it was a JPEG of a girl that was age 11. And this is an article from the New York Post, and it's talking about Jamie Raskin, and he saw a file of a 9-year-old girl that had been molested by these people. So
now, we've had Jamie Raskin on our calls. We assume he's completely credible.
I think that he is, although I will say this, and there was some formatting difficulties, and there was one of the slides that had 9 years old, but actually it had an equal sign and then 9 years old, but it was actually 19. So I'm surmising that he actually saw, because I'd heard it, I'm surmising that he actually saw one that didn't have a formatting problem that did show a 9-year-old girl. And I knew that I've known for a number of years. I've spoken at a number of anti-trafficking conferences, and I've gotten to know a lot of therapists over the years, and I've known that Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking girls under 10 years old.
Oh my God. That's very rarely. The assumption is the girls were.
Yes, that's been manufactured by the government and the media. It's bullshit. I mean, granted, there were girls that were 17, 18, but then there were girls that were 9 or 10.
Right. We can't use, by the way, we're on the, we can't use 4-letter words. So, okay,
gotcha.
No problem, though.
This
and
is
then we're going to want you to, we're going to go at least till 20 minutes more, but we want you at some point to introduce where this actually affects the national political dialogue here.
Okay, so I'll skip these then. This is Epstein and eugenics. This is a guy named Brian Bishop. And Epstein is underwriting him because he wants to, and you can see here, he wants to make designer babies and start cloning.
Well, isn't Elon Musk into that?
A number of them are actually. And cloning is relatively easy. All you need is an ovum. You take the DNA out of the ovum, you insert the DNA that you want in, and then you give it an electric charge, and then that starts the mitosis process. And it's Dolly the sheep was cloned in 1996. And if you can clone a sheep, you can clone a human. Now, this guy, he's bad news. He's a big time Hollywood producer. His name is Barry Josephson. And this is a dialogue that he's having with Epstein. And Epstein has procured a 16-year-old girl for him. And Josephson says, I need her mother's number. So her mother is pimping the 16-year-old girl out and pimping him out to Barry Josephson. But then here's kind of an interesting dialogue that they have after they settle who's the number and the girl and the mother. So Josephson says, I've also been thinking a lot about that question you asked about Bill Gates. Asked of Bill Gates, how do we get rid of poor people as a whole? And I have an answer, comment regarding that for you. When can I call you to discuss? So these guys aren't talking about getting rid of poverty. These guys are talking about getting rid of poor people. And here's a sick, twisted, this guy's an eminent biologist. And what he's doing with Epstein is he's taking male infants and giving them hormone blockers. And then he's taking female infants and shooting them full of testosterone. And he wants to produce, I guess he finds hermaphrodites to be sexy, and he wants to produce hermaphrodites.
Oh, God.
And this is from Reuters in 2005, where Trivers is interviewed, and he says, by the time they're 14 or 15, they're like grown women. We're 60 years ago, so I don't see these acts as so heinous. So he's completely down with molesting 14-year-olds or 15-year-olds. And then this is Virginia Giuffre. Epstein approached her and said that he wanted her to carry a baby for him. And that was one of the pieces of critical mass that got her out. But this is a diary, and we don't know who the woman is, but this woman is talking about she's carried one Epstein baby and she's going to carry another one. And with the diary is her ultrasounds. So Jeffrey Epstein did have women impregnated, and I think that he was probably cloning.
Oh my God.
And then this gets into black market babies, and this woman is being interviewed, I'm assuming by law enforcement. And she said on record that Jeffrey Epstein offered her to do this, birth babies for black market use. And then here's a New York Times article that talks about Jeffrey Epstein wanting to seed humanity with his DNA.
Oh my God.
So we're going to skip that.
Well, one other question I want to slip in before, I mean, this is beyond whatever. Do you think that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide? Was he murdered, and is he still alive?
I think he was murdered.
Okay. I personally think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this guy had so much money and thought he was invincible that he never believed for a minute that he was going to stay in jail, and that he would certainly not commit suicide. That's my feeling. But you knew him better than I, even in the.
Well, actually, I didn't have a close personal relationship with him, but he's a megalomaniac, and I don't think that he would have killed him. But I think that Epstein would have talked. I think that was the problem. The people that were in intelligence that facilitated Jeffrey Epstein, I believe, felt he was too used to creature comforts. He was not going to get into living in prison. So I think it was just best to kill him at that point. But this is an FBI report about Epstein being Mossad. And this is another example of apocrypha, because the guy who was interviewed for this, the confidential informant, his name is Charles Johnson. And this is an independent article about Charles Johnson, notorious far-right troll ordered to pay up to 71 million in racketeering scheme where he pretended to be a spy. So I've shown you acts of disinformation, and then this is definitely misinformation. Although I do believe that Jeffrey Epstein worked with the Mossad and CIA. And here's something that I find really interesting. The CIA director under Biden, his name is Bill Burns. And it was reported by, I believe, the Wall Street Journal that Bill Burns met with Jeffrey Epstein 3 times before he was the head of the CIA. And a spokesman for Burns said he met with Epstein for advice related to transitioning to the private sector and didn't have a relationship with him. So these are emails about Bill Burns. This is from Terje Rod Larsen. He was a Norwegian diplomat. And Epstein is talking about setting up a meeting with him and Bill Burns. And then this is also from Terje Rod Larsen. And I suggest you reach out to Bill Burns and tell him if you need help. And here is this is a schedule of Jeffrey Epstein, and he's meeting Bill Burns in Washington, D.C. for lunch. And now here's kind of a very, this one is pretty ugly. Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein is meeting with Peter Thiel from 2 to 4. And then from 3 to 4, Burns and Epstein and Peter Thiel are meeting together. And then from 4 to 5, Epstein is meeting with Burns alone. So,
now, Peter Thiel was Musk's partner at PayPal.
Yes.
And he strikes me as being one of the most thoroughly evil human beings that anyone has ever encountered. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say that's a fair assessment, yeah.
And he's behind a lot of the MAGA politics and will be pouring millions and millions of dollars into the 2026 election. Is that a fair guess?
He made J.D. Vance. He was the guy that financed J.D. Vance. So yeah, without Peter, and yeah, Peter Thiel is a thoroughly foul human being. So here we go again with Burns, and he's going to meet Pritzker. Now, if you type in Bill, here's the search, the Epstein library search. And if you type Bill Burns into the library search, you get 324 results. So obviously, they met more than 3 times. And obviously, Epstein wasn't giving him advice about transitioning.
So, Nick, are you maintaining this Epstein library? Where does the Epstein library come from?
It's from the Department of Justice.
The Department of Justice is maintaining?
Yeah. The Department of Justice dumped 3 million of these records, emails and police reports, things like that.
And have you looked at all these 3 million?
3 million. I looked at a lot of them, but not 3 million. There are certain areas that I'm kind of interested in, but I'm kind of giving you, this audience, kind of a panorama of a number of these.
That's unbelievable. So anybody on this call could go to the Epstein library and look at the 3 million documents?
Yes, and I would suggest that you go to Gmail. You can go to an account called Gmail, and their documents are much better situated than the Department of Justice, their documents. So, and here's kind of the billionaire's ball. We have Epstein having dinner with Musk, Thiel, and Zuckerberg.
Oh my God. Jeez.
You can just imagine what a dinner with those 4 would be like.
God, you'd have to get dry cleaned after doing that.
Well, I'm sure that they're talking about getting rid of poor people somewhere or another.
Now, all these guys involved with the sex trafficking?
Zuckerberg's name has never come up. Here's one where Elon Musk says that Jeffrey Epstein tried to get him to his island and repeated invitations, and he declined them all. But then here's an email where Elon Musk is emailing Jeffrey Epstein and saying, what day night will be the wildest party on our island? So Elon Musk is obviously lying about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and he's looking for a wild night on Jeffrey Epstein's island.
God, Steve Caruso. Steve, can we keep this going after you don't have to record it, but if we can, I'm sure a lot of people would want to hear Nick as long as you're got energy to talk. This is every bit as infuriating as Eileen Proctor said it would be. Steve, this is Steve Caruso. Nick, he's our engineer.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah.
how you doing?
Hey, Palantir. Well, the first thing is the notepad trick. Have you heard about that, where you can take a PDF and put it in Notepad and it'll show the redact? Have you done any of that?
Okay, so that worked for some of them early on, but
They stopped. Okay.
yeah, they changed their.
And Palantir has now just taken over computer security for Piketon, and also I think their logistics, which is Peter Thiel. Also,
Peter Thiel, Epstein put a lot of money into Palantir, and actually, I think Ehud Barak might have too. But yes, Palantir is a big brother, is our big brother now.
Oh yeah, he's all over the security computer apparatus in this country. You've been given multi-million, maybe billion-dollar contracts, and this is Piketon, Ohio, where they're trying to start these refinement of uranium down there, or been doing the uranium stuff.
Yeah, there is a huge. He's pointing out there's a huge nuclear connection in all this stuff.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Because
they're both evil. I mean, these people are evil. Nuclear power is evil. There'd be obvious a nexus there, I think.
Well, the nexus, a lot of it seems to be through Peter Thiel, and now the Trump family is involved with fusion, and they've destroyed the NRC, and now we're involved in a war with a country that's quite adroit at using drones.
Yes.
So listen, we usually disband at 4:20. Steve, can we keep going? You don't have to record, but Nick, is there something? We have 51 people with us. Is there something you want to tell everybody before we proceed?
No, I can. How much time do you have?
Well, Steve, how long can you keep us going here?
Well, Myla can stay. Yeah, go.
It's up to Nick. I'll keep it going as long as.
Myla's our stalwart here, and she made sure that we got you on in good time, and she can maintain the Zoom. But I'm willing to stay, obviously, and we got 50 people with us. So we are a good guest. It's great to have you. We really appreciate it.
So here we got Musk, Thiel, and Zuckerberg. Here we have Elon going to Epstein's island, and the Rothschilds were giving Jeffrey Epstein $25 million a year. And I'm not one of those like everything's a Jewish conspiracy guy. My grandmother was Jewish. I'm not, but yes, the Rothschilds were connected to Jeffrey Epstein.
Why? What was their interest in Epstein? What was the Rothschild family's interest in Epstein?
We know that they gave Jeffrey Epstein 25 million, and Jeffrey Epstein was a representative for the Rothschilds, whatever that means. I haven't really been able to put it together.
Why did they give him 25 million?
Because Jeffrey Epstein is a good guy to know. I mean, he can he'll pander underage girls or adult girls. He'll launder money. He'll sell arms. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein. If you were Team Evil, and you had a first-round draft choice, it would be Jeffrey Epstein. He might even be the first pick overall in that particular draft. So, yeah, he was on essentially a retainer from the Rothschilds, $25 million a year.
A year, not just that one. They paid him $25 a year, $25 million a year.
Yeah.
To do what?
to represent him, to represent them. I mean, who knows, dude? I mean, I have no idea what Jeffrey Epstein did for the Rothschilds. Now here, this is really an important part. These are documents from, I'm surmising, the Southern District of New York. And they're naming 3 procurers. And this one is Sarah Kellen. This one is Leslie Groff. And I don't know who this one is. But they know who the procurers are. They know who the recruiters are. And Sarah Kellen went to the feds and wanted to make a deal. Sarah Kellen was like the henchwoman, the right-hand henchwoman of Ghislaine Maxwell. And I've always said we don't even need the documents. If the Department of Justice had the will, we know who a lot of the recruiters are. We know who a lot of the procurers are. If the Department of Justice had the will, it could indict these procurers on multiple counts of child trafficking, which is 15 to life in the federal system, and they would roll over in a heartbeat. Sarah Kellen wanted to make a deal with the feds, and she could have given them everything. She could have given them the politicians and power brokers that were blackmailed.
And we would assume that would include Trump.
She could have given them everything. And the Department of Justice didn't make that deal with her, which really shows you how heavily this has been covered up.
Is she alive?
She's alive. She had a $4 million house in New York, and I think she's living in her $2 million apartment in Miami. So with her, we could have had, this thing could have been settled. Everybody could have been indicted and put in prison when she came forward, but the feds didn't do it. And here's Noam Chomsky. And Noam was a kind of a hero of mine. I mean, I read Manufacturing Consent and it really blew me away. But he and Jeffrey Epstein, he fawns over Jeffrey Epstein. This is what he writes to Jeffrey Epstein in an email. Valerie and I just want to tell you that it's one of the great experiences of our life to have you as a friend and to remain so and cherish this permanent relationship, Noam. So that's Noam Chomsky and Jeffrey Epstein.
Let me interrupt. We're going to reach the normal end, but we're going to keep going with you. And Nick, we've been talking with Nick Bryant. Nick, do you have a book out? And where do people get it?
I've got books out. I wrote a book about a child trafficking network that was actually larger than Epstein's that got covered up. It's called The Franklin Scandal. I've written a book, I've co-authored a book called Compromise, the Politics of Sex, Lies, and Blackmail with a guy who ran an escort service, a gay escort service in DC, and the CIA would use his escorts to compromise politicians. And I've also written a book on Watergate. And then I've also written a book on lower socioeconomic children in the United States.
So what is your website? How do people get a hold of you?
NickBryantNYC.com, but I'd really like people to go to EpsteinJustice.com. That's really important.
That's your website, is Epstein?
Well, that's the website of the nonprofit organization that I started.
And what is your nonprofit organization?
It's called Epstein Justice.
Okay. EpsteinJustice.org or .com?
.com. Someone took .org from us, so we went with .com.
All right, Nick Bryant, thank you for being with us. We're going to continue. We still have 47 people, and I'm sure in another half hour we'll have 45 people, so or maybe 50. So again, the question in the back of everybody's mind is, how does this impact Trump?
Well, what we see now is what Trump's done, all these contortions Trump has done to cover this up. And we don't really know, because the government has so assiduously covered this up. We do not, I mean, we know who a number of the perpetrators are, and Trump has certainly been named as a perpetrator. So it's up to our government. Our government right now, and our government since 2008, has been covering up Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile network. And when
Since 2008?
Since 2008, yeah.
So you're saying Obama was involved in covering this up?
Yeah, Obama was. And so
why? Why?
Because there are people that are compromised that are Democrats, and there are people that are compromised that are Republicans. It's just not the Republicans that are compromised. It's just not the Democrats that are compromised. I've been writing about political compromise for a long time. Both parties have people that are compromised. This is kind of was new news to me. Federal prosecutors actually prepared a 60-count indictment of Jeffrey Epstein.
Under who? Which AG?
Under Bush 2, the cognitively challenged George Bush.
Bush 2, the Justice Department under Bush wanted to indict Jeffrey Epstein?
No. Well, a U.S. attorney did. And the Bush administration completely quashed it all. And they were going to indict Jeffrey Epstein on 60 counts. And one of them was count 51 was child sex trafficking. And as I said earlier, that's a heavy duty sentence in the federal system. That's 15 to life. And they would have indicted Epstein and 3 of his henchwomen. And also the feds had a list of 36 victims. This is their list. But they knew of 40 underage victims, but they had a list of 36 underage victims. But Ken Starr, he came to the rescue. Ken Starr and the top FBI brass. Alexander Acosta was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, and he was the one that was overseeing this prosecution. And he wanted to indict Jeffrey Epstein on 60 counts. But Ken Starr and the FBI brass went down to Florida and lit him up. So Jeffrey Epstein had to do 13 months in a county jail, even though the feds were aware of 40 Epstein victims. And then all of his co-conspirators were given immunity. And that Pandora's box was built by Bush too. Obama didn't touch it. Trump didn't touch it. Biden didn't touch it. And then Trump ran on Epstein transparency. So I think Trump thought that he could open Pandora's box ever so slightly and just slam it shut. But that wasn't the case, because once you open Pandora's box, the curse comes out. So there was an FBI memo about 10 co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein. Now the government says that there's no co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein. But the government had 10, and one of them is obviously Les Wexner.
Right.
And the other, a wealthy businessman in Ohio.
Well, no, that would be, is there another one in addition to Les Wexner?
Well, they're all blacked out, but we know that the wealthy businessman in Ohio is Les Wexner.
All right, so just for the record, I actually was a camp counselor at the Columbus Jewish Center, where Les Wexner had been a camp counselor 7 years before me. And I heard him speak a couple times in Columbus. Obviously, he was a player. And then Bob Petrakis, my co-conspirator over the years, was the first one to, we didn't know, who was Jeffrey Epstein, who knew, but he's the first one to break the stories about Jeffrey Epstein. And he says that Jeffrey Epstein was referred to in the early FBI files, when they're investigating Les Wexner's mob connections, that Les Wexner was, Epstein was referred to as, quote, the boyfriend, unquote.
Well, Epstein and Wexner had a strange relationship. They were lovers, and they also liked to molest kids together. And Les Wexner did give Jeffrey Epstein power of attorney over his vast wealth in 1991. And I used to think it was blackmail, but I think that they were laundering money, because Les Wexner is hooked up with the CIA himself. So Les Wexner was called before the House Oversight Committee on February 18th. And actually, the Oversight Committee, he didn't go to the Oversight Committee. It's strange enough, the Oversight Committee came to him. And he testified that his the last time he saw Jeffrey Epstein was in 2006, that he cut him off completely after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. But here's an email from 2008. They were emailing each other in 2008. And then this is an article from the New York Times. In 2011, 4 years after Wexner said he had severed all ties with Mr. Epstein, Mr. Wexner's charitable foundation received a $56 million contribution from a trust linked to Mr. Epstein. So Jeffrey Epstein, Les Wexner said he never saw Jeffrey Epstein after 2006, and Jeffrey Epstein gave him $56 million in 2011. Now then,
he probably did it by Zoom, right?
and that is perjury. I mean, Les Wexner perjured himself multiple times before the oversight committee, and that's a 5-year felony. I mean, in the very least, they should start taking him down for lying to Congress. I mean, he perjured himself before Congress.
Myla Reson wants to ask you a question, Myla.
Well, I'd like to ask a question on behalf of one of our participants in the Zoom who would like to know if this PowerPoint presentation is available on the Epstein Justice website.
There's one that's a lot like it that's available on the Epstein Justice website.
And then I have another question, which is, can you provide us with one explicit example of Wexner perjuring himself before Congress?
Yeah, I just did. Okay, so Wexner said right here in this article, this is from CBS News. Wexner said that the last time he saw Jeffrey Epstein or communicated with him is in 2006. He says it right there. But here's an email from 2008. So obviously they're communicating in 2008. And then, as I said earlier, Jeffrey Epstein gave Les Wexner $56 million in 2011. So obviously Wexner was lying when he said he had nothing to do with Epstein after 2006. I find it hard to believe that a guy would forget about $56 million, especially a rich guy.
Well, Jesus,
this is what Prince Andrew looked like when he got arrested.
Yeah, that one's been on Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel. They love that picture.
I love that picture too, because it shows a guy getting arrested that thought that the rules didn't apply to him. And then
I don't believe for 1 minute that Epstein committed suicide, because he did not believe the rules applied to him. I don't think he thought he was going to be in for more than 10 days, you know? I mean, come on.
Well, they put him in with a serial killer, a cop that had killed 4 people via contracts. I mean, I think that the feds thought that this guy would kill him. And actually, according to accounts, this guy did try to kill him. Epstein didn't try to commit suicide. This guy tried to kill him. But here is Peter Mandelson getting arrested, and he was the UK ambassador to the United States. And so in the UK, at least a couple of people have been arrested.
Well, that was the line on the Oscars last night. Conan's line was, there were no Brits represented at the UK at the Oscars, but at least the Brits arrest their pedophiles.
Yeah, well, they arrested some of them, and this is the last email. Epstein and Steve Bannon are talking, and they're waxing metaphysical about evil, and Epstein quotes John Milton: "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." So that was Jeffrey Epstein's approach to life. And join us. This is Epstein Justice. Join our Facebook group. We have monthly webinars. What we want is an independent congressional commission. An independent congressional commission does not require a presidential signature. It does require a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate. But independent congressional commissions often farm out investigations to non-government personnel. And that is the only way we're going to have a shot at truth and justice and accountability here. is with an independent congressional commission. If this goes into a subcommittee, it's just going to die on the vine. So please check us out. You can email us at epsteinjustice.com. And we could also use donations. Someone said to me, well, why do you need donations? And I said, well, you know, because we hired a very good accountant because we're going against the grain, and we didn't want our 501c3 status to be revoked for some bullshit accounting thing. So I hired a pretty good accountant, and this person said to me, well, why do you need money? And I said, well, you know, it's funny. I didn't ask that to the accountant when I paid her. Why do you need money? So, so we could use donations, and that's my presentation.
Where are you based, Nick?
I live in New York City.
Okay. Do you know Steve Donziger by any chance?
I do not, no.
All right, so Steve Donziger is also in Manhattan, and he's been with us many times. He was the lawyer who was with the Ecuador when they sued Citgo or Chevron, and they had him disbarred. And you guys should meet because I'm sure you have a lot. I'll be back east, and we'll get together, Nick, with you and Steve. Listen, we still have 47 people with us. I'm sure people have questions. The big question everybody has, Myla, well, go ahead. Myla, go ahead and then go ahead.
I actually have another question from Lynn Feinerman, the host of Women Rising Radio. And I think that you partially answered that when you talked about how it's important that the Democrats win both the House and Senate so that they can have some real power. Lynn was saying that she's wondering what needs to be done in order to hold them accountable, hold this Epstein class accountable. And it sounded to me like it's imperative that the Democrats win control of the House and Senate, and you also talked about joining the Facebook group, I think, that's the Epstein Justice Facebook
group. And
go ahead.
The goal of the Independent Congressional Commission, we have two objectives. We want to know why the government covered up child trafficking. If you cover up a crime, you're aiding and abetting that crime. So we want to know why the government aided and abetted child trafficking. And we want the perpetrators to be prosecuted. Two very simple baseline moral things.
Could the state of New York AG office launch an investigation?
They could, but they're susceptible to the federal trump card being slammed down on the table. The feds can stop just about any investigation if they want, any state investigation. So that would be a problem. We're going to have to, if we're going to fix this, and I think that this might be the best opportunity in our lives to fix our government. Because I do believe that there are a number of people that are compromised. I've written 3 books on political blackmail. There are a lot of people in our government that are compromised. And if we just got them off, it would be, we'd have a much better government. We wouldn't be at war with Iran right now.
God knows. Well, I got to ask you, I have seen the video from Katie Johnson, which I assume is a pseudonym. Yes. I have never been more, I don't know what the word is, uprooted by any video than I've ever seen than that. She describes being physically forced to perform oral sex on Donald Trump.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Is she still alive?
Yeah, as I said, she is living in the Southwest selling real estate, and she's got a nice boyfriend, and they go to Europe occasionally. It took me 3 years. I mean, I looked for her for 3 years, and I found her, but she wouldn't talk to me.
But if she's not talking, how have they not killed her?
Well, if she's not talking, they don't need to kill her.
Okay, I mean, it's not my world. I got the closest I've ever gotten to the mafia is I've seen Godfather 3 or 4 times. That's about it. I just found out, by the way, yesterday that actually Frank Sinatra wanted the role of Don Corleone and never forgave that it was given to Marlon Brando.
Well, Marlon Brando did a pretty good job.
I think Frank Sinatra would have done a good job, but nonetheless, we digress. So here's the question that what's gonna happen with this and Donald Trump? I will say, by the way, Pam Bondi, you have to agree that, as you said here, Biden never pursued this. Obama never pursued this. They had it in front. I was shocked to hear that they were looking at Epstein in 2008 when Bush 2 was in office. How did these people never deal with this?
Bush, okay, so Alexander Acosta was the U.S. attorney that
Right.
really wanted to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein.
He what?
That really wanted to prosecute
He
Jeffrey
did?
Epstein.
You say he wanted?
He had a 60-count indictment against Jeffrey Epstein, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. So
who was his president?
Okay, so there's only two people that can tell a U.S. attorney to stand down in the government constitutionally. One is the attorney general, and one is the president. Now, the attorney general at that time was Alberto Gonzales, Bush
Oh
II's
my
attorney
God.
general.
He was
So-
really.
But an attorney general isn't going to go out on the limb and cover up a nationwide or international pedophile network unless his boss tells him to. He's not going to do that unilaterally. So this order to cover this up came from Bush too. I'm convinced of it.
Why?
Because there were a lot of people that were compromised. And Bush too wanted to make sure, as did Obama and Biden, that this wasn't exposed.
So and we're a nonprofit, by the way, so we're nonpartisan. And this is the first I've heard that Biden and Obama had an interest in not having Jeffrey Epstein pursued. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh my God. Well, you heard it here first, folks. I have not. So all of us who've been
Actually, I've been saying that for many years, but yeah.
all of us who have been scoffing at Pam Bondi when she says, "Well, why didn't Merrick Garland pursue this?" Well, good question. Why didn't he? They knew about it, right? They knew who this guy was. They knew what he was doing, and
Absolutely.
Obama let him slide, and Biden let him slide.
There are people that are Democrats and Republicans that are compromised in our government. I got to a blackmail photographer. When I was writing the Franklin scandal story of power brokers, child abuse, and betrayal, I got to a blackmail photographer for that particular network. And I was trying to get my mind around the whole thing because it's basically Epstein is kind of a carbon copy of that. And I was trying to get my mind around it. And, I said, how does this work? I mean, tell me how this works. And he said, once you're compromised, it's like you're on a yacht, and it's a beautiful yacht, and it's a beautiful day, and you can have anything you want on that yacht. But if you decide to get off that yacht, the people on the yacht are going to make sure that you drown. So there's zero incentive once people are compromised for them to get off the yacht.
Well, of course, Steve Bannon was arrested while he was on a yacht. I've always loved that. What is Steve? Where does Steve Bannon fit into all this?
I think that he's just a drunk reprobate. I don't know. I don't know how compromised he is, or if he's not. I've heard conflicting things about Steve Bannon, so I really couldn't make a definitive judgment at this point, other than that he's a repellent human being.
Well, why was he making a documentary film about Jeffrey Epstein?
Because he was trying to resurrect Jeffrey Epstein.
Why?
That was his goal.
Why?
Because they were pals. And
Oh,
he thought, he's like Noam Chomsky. He thought Jeffrey Epstein was a swell guy, and he wanted to get Jeffrey Epstein back integrated into society, even though Jeffrey Epstein made all these connections with like Woody Allen and Noam Chomsky, et cetera, even after he was a convicted sex offender.
Myla?
Well, I'm just wondering, I'm hoping that maybe Nick, you'll be able to come back sometime because now I have a question for Mylene Proctor.
Oh, I know
And
Mylene.
yeah, Eileen brought you to us,
She's
and
why I'm here.
she says that when you look at the Franklin scandals, there were many in the White House that were involved in that scandal, and that we should ask you about that. So it sounds
Which
like
White House? Which
it
White
sounds
House?
it really was it Benjamin Franklin, but really, will you be able to come back sometime because we're going to have to continue.
Sure, it was the Bush 1 White House.
Bush 1.
Yeah.
George H.W.
Yeah, they covered up the Franklin trafficking network was actually bigger than the Epstein trafficking network. But the Franklin trafficking network was only around for 10 to 12 years, whereas the Epstein trafficking network was probably around for 25 years.
Oh my God. You're saying that H.W. Bush was somehow involved with Jeffrey Epstein?
No, he was involved with a different trafficking network.
Oh, I see. Were the
Which-
two did the two trafficking networks intertwine?
They have one common denominator. They were both covered up by Bill Barr. Bill Barr was Bush 1's attorney general, and then he was Trump's attorney general. So he played an integral role in covering both of them up. And if you do a deep dive into Bill Barr, you can see that he's a very malignant creature.
Right, and his dad,
Yes.
wasn't it his dad who hired Jeffrey Epstein for that girls' school without any
Actually
credentials?
Dalton School, one of the
Right.
most prestigious schools in the world. And
Right.
his dad, Donald Barr, who was by the letter kind of guy, he'd been with the OSS, and some people have extrapolated that he was the CIA. But anyway, he hired Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey Epstein was a college dropout. So
Right.
that does not make sense. So I think that there was some kind of, I think that they'd known each other previously, and I think I know why, but I won't get into it because I can't really prove it.
Is there any link between the Epstein network and the Murdoch family?
They have not come up, no.
Okay, because I started watching last night on Netflix. You know, Netflix runs the greatest documentaries. And this is a 4-part documentary on the Murdoch family. And Epstein, amazingly enough, has not come up. So
I haven't if the Murdoch family is involved with Epstein, it's very tangential.
okay. But Bill Barr now has turned against Trump. Is that not right?
Yeah, Bill Barr is a mercenary, and I mean, it's difficult to know what. I mean, that guy's such bad news that it's really difficult to know what he really believes.
I mean, you're deep. How long do you have to shower at night to, I mean, I've been dealing with nuclear power all these years, right? So this is a whole other different, and Myla too. I mean, we go to bed thinking about this goddamn radiation stuff, but here you've got the worst sleaze. Do you have the link that we can put up to the Katie Johnson interview? And is that interview credible? I mean, I wondered.
Well, a lot of people. Okay, so in my quest to find Katie Johnson, I encountered people that knew her, and most of the people that knew her thought she was telling the truth. But it was heartbreaking for me to spend 3 years looking for her, and she wouldn't talk to me. So,
but she made this video.
Yeah, I know.
Why would she do that? Why did she make the video?
Well, she was going to sue Trump and Epstein. I mean, that was originally the plan, but she retracted the lawsuit because of threats and other things.
But the video is there, and she does not have a mask on. They have, video erased her face.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you,
I'm very familiar with that. I started as soon as that lawsuit was filed. I started following it, so I'm very familiar.
What year was it filed?
I think it was like 2016.
All right, so it's 10 years already.
Yeah.
I can't believe they've left her alive. I wish her nothing but the best. And anybody, I don't know how you can track down that video. I don't have the URL, but I literally, I've seen a million videos. I've never seen anything like that.
Sonny, it's really easy to find. Just try Google, put in Katie Johnson. I'll find it for you if you can't.
Well, yeah, we want to give it to people, but people, I've not been a big follower. I mean, we're involved with other issues, and I've been hoping for the best for the Epstein case, meaning, it results in Donald Trump removal. But I've never seen anything like that video. It's just horrifying.
Well, you've been living a very sheltered existence.
I have. What can I tell you? Thank God somebody has. Nick, does no one else? We're going to certainly end it soon. Does anyone else want to chime in here? Please do. Nick, you're remarkable. Eileen
Thank you.
said you were great, and you've certainly lived up to your expectations, except you didn't have the link, which drives me crazy, running a Zoom in the middle, and suddenly my next guest doesn't have the link. And I have to, and I'm not great with computers, so what we can do. But we got you on, and I will meet you in Manhattan
Sure.
in May or June, and I'll introduce you to Steve, who you really should know. So no one wants to chime in here, please. If you don't, that's fine. You've been generous with your time, Nick. You want to give us a last word here? Well, just tell us when this is going to bring down Donald Trump.
Well, it's going to take an independent congressional commission, and I would suggest that you go to my website or go to the Epstein Justice website. You can get involved. You can go to our webinars. You can sign our petition that has 83,000 signatures. And we'll get you involved in doing this. This is not going to be easy. What we're doing is not going to be easy, but I think it's essential for the health of our government. I think that our government has become highly pathological. And when there's a pathology, to get rid of a pathology, there's three phases. There's awareness, and I think we've got awareness, and then becomes acceptance. And I think this latest tranche of documents is bringing about acceptance. And then there's action to actually do something about it. So we're somewhere between. I think we're gaining a critical mass of acceptance, but we have to. I mean, there are people in our government, in our Senate, in our House that are thoroughly compromised, and until we get them out, look at the legislation that they passed. I mean, the middle class is disintegrating, and that the middle class is disintegrating because of the legislation that our legislators are passing. And I showed you an email earlier where Barry Josephson, the big-time Hollywood producer, is asking Jeffrey Epstein, following up on Bill Gates, how do we get rid of poor people? So those are our leaders. Those are our leaders.
Auschwitz, man. I mean, that was the formula, right? So, the Democrats clearly, Noam Chomsky, for God's sakes, who would have thought that? But it seems to me if the Democrats wanted to, they could convene an independent commission that
Well,
without
actually,
congressional.
you need a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate.
But they could just go out and do a commission on their own.
But it wouldn't have the gravitas of a real independent congressional commission. And
Right.
when I'm talking about real independent congressional commission, I'm talking about subpoena ability.
Subpoena
You're-
power, right.
You're gonna need subpoena power.
Well, to me, it all ended with Katie Johnson's tape. I mean, that just to me was the bottom line. But here we go. All right. Well, listen, Nick Bryant, thank you, Eileen Proctor, for bringing us Nick. I'm glad after my screaming and yelling, I got you the link. Anything else that anybody wants to know? We still have 40 people with us, so but we'll let you go. Myla, thank you for keeping the Zoom going. Myla, go ahead.
One of our stalwart participants here, Robert Cesario, found the Katie Johnson video, and he posted a link in the chat. The title of it on YouTube is Video Affidavit of Katie Johnson Surfaces. Video Affidavit of Katie Johnson Surfaces. So he found it right away, and thank you, Robert.
And Nick, thank you again. And I just don't know where to go with this. It's astounding to me after seeing that. I saw about a month ago that Donald Trump could still be in office. It's just beyond any kind of cognitive. You put a slide about cognitive dissonance, you know. So I guess we're going to see. Of course, the joke is that Mike Hersh said, he did Iran to cover up the Epstein files. It's worse. And just for some balance here, Stuart Rhodes, I mentioned this earlier. Stuart Rhodes, talking about loathsome individual. He's a oath keeper that has the patch, and he was a leader in the assault on January 6th. And he's asking Trump today, personally, for a pardon, but he's also said he's completely lost it with the Iran war. Now, his denunciations of the Iran war are all totally anti-Semitic, but here we are. That's where we are. Okay, Nick, you're great. Really, thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Hey, have a great night.
We will see you next week.
I'll be glad to come back and
Okay.
show you.
And next week we will be dealing with the ins and outs of election protection on which all of our lives and the future of the planet depend. See you next week, guys. Thank you, Nick. Thank you,
everybody.
Myla, Steve, everybody. No nukes.
Nukes.